Then I went to Douluo. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 576 Pushing the Coffin? In the Sea of Spirit, Dai Yun's consciousness was condensed and sank like water, sitting quietly above the sparkling sea. Above his head, the golden sun completely turned into the appearance of the Eye of Destiny because of the awakening of the Eye of Destiny. Dai Yun didn't know when he got the Eye of Destiny, but he thought it should be when he was chased and seriously injured by the evil soul master in the starred-out Great Forest. Perhaps the reason why he didn't see any injuries later was because the three-eyed golden lion performed a ritual to guide him to fate. But the Eye of Destiny he got seemed different, and he didn't feel the power of fate in it. When he carefully sensed it, he could control the Eye of Destiny, and he could also release the spiritual eye soul skills with explosive strength through the Eye of Destiny, but he couldn't detect any power of destiny. Instead, it seemed that there was another mysterious power occupying it, but that power could not cover the Eye of Destiny for the time being, so the Eye of Destiny still looked like a rose gold color. However, these things were not Dai Yun's primary concern. What he cared more about at this time was the contract concluded in his body. The power of the contract is still there, but the other end of the contract connection seems to have suddenly fallen into a dark unknown area, cutting off Wally's perception. This may be a major disadvantage of an equal contract. Any party to the contract can cut off all perception of the other party at any time, making his own status completely secret. Just like now, Dai Yun knows nothing about King Gaia's situation, and can only deduce and guess based on the last information transmitted before the contract connection was cut off. In order to protect himself, King Gaia endured the bloody light of death from the Death Tower. Dai Yun didn't know what it would feel like to be completely hit by the light of death, but the information transmitted by the contract at the end clearly told him that King Gaia almost died under that blow. The attack of the light of death is full of destruction and destructiveness, and it is also mixed with the evil thoughts of thousands of wronged souls. Even though King Gaia's body is the dark demon evil god tiger, it was almost wiped out because of the resentment that hit the soul. King Gaia was brought back by Tang Liu and rebuilt his body before he was resurrected. Theoretically speaking, King Gaia had actually died a long time ago. Even if he was resurrected, his spiritual consciousness had not been completed. But under Tang Liu's protection for so many years, he had not encountered any danger, so this potential hidden danger had not been revealed. Now he had resisted a ray of death for Dai Yun, and he was about to become an evil beast that had completely lost its mind and only knew killing and destruction, that is, the real dark demon evil god tiger. But even though his spiritual consciousness was unstable and there was a possibility of losing control at any time, King Gaia still blocked a ray of death for himself again. And it was a complete version of the white ray of death. King Gaia finally told him that he needed time to recover. Dai Yun didn't know if what King Gaia said was true, he just wanted to know if he could help King Gaia, instead of being like now, not even knowing the specific situation of King Gaia. Every time he thought of this, Dai Yun's mood became heavier, as if he was holding his breath. And irritability and powerlessness invaded his whole body at the same time. But in the end, this incident still made him deeply aware of one thing. He couldn't count on the conscience of the evil. No matter how tragic and helpless the reasons for the evil people to choose to fall into the evil side are. Just like when facing Yi's issue, if he didn't think about her relationship with Long Xiaoyao at that time, if he didn't think about the tragic setting of Yi's issue in the original work, if he didn't think about compromising with Yi's issue, then would Yi's issue have no chance to attack him, and would Elder King Gaia not be seriously injured for protecting him? When facing evil people, you should be more evil than them to keep yourself alive. Only in this way can the people around you not be tainted by evil. As a cultivator, we should be based on inner integrity. Although we don't take it as our responsibility to save the people of the world, since we can't bear to be good to ourselves, why not stride ahead? However, the road to salvation is difficult and bumpy, and there are many evil spirits and evil people with evil intentions. In order to wish those who are cherished to be peaceful and peaceful, we should kill them with thunder. Just ask for a clear conscience, that's all. The Sea of Spirit kept surging with the changes in the Master's mood. The Eye of Destiny in the sky seemed to have self-awareness and cast its gaze towards Dai Yun in the sea. At the same time, Dai Yun on the sea also looked up and looked at the Eye of Destiny in the sky. This time, he actually saw himself. There were also several special lights of different colors wrapped around him. The most conspicuous transparent color was also the strangest, because transparency should not be perceived by human eyes. Then there were the slightly inferior gray, black, silver and purple. They should represent the 5 talents he possessed: time, evil, darkness, space, and lightning. Among them, the most unfamiliar time and evil seemed to be merging with him at a deeper level. When that fusion began, Dai-Yuns, the master of this sea of spirit, suddenly realized that a different force had invaded. The eye of destiny in the sky took the lead in casting its gaze, and also allowed Dai-Yuns to see clearly the power that broke into his sea of spirit. It was a mysterious blue-black light, and a figure appeared at the end of his sea of spirit. It was Tang Liu. When Tang Liu appeared, Dai-Yun seemed to vaguely see another ocean behind him. That was the real spiritual sea, boundless. It was filled with 3 special colors: green, blood red, and moon white, but they were all led by that mysterious blue-black color, wandering in the spiritual sea in an orderly manner. Although it was only a moment, Dai-Yun still felt the extremely majestic spiritual power, which was a level that he could not resist at all. Perhaps the other party's spiritual power had already reached the realm of God King, named by later generations. In the last second, Tang Liu was still at the edge of Dai-Yun's spiritual sea, and the next moment, he was in front of him. Without saying much nonsense, he just asked, "Do you want to help King Gaia?" Dai-Yun was stunned for a moment, and then nodded decisively. "What should I do?" Tang Liu said concisely. "Go to push the coffin." Push the coffin. It was a month later when Dai-Yun woke up from his coma. Whether it was the second awakening of the main body martial soul, or the extremely dark innate field, the silence field, after using it in the state at that time, it caused a considerable burden on his mental power and body. It is not easy to defeat an extreme Douluo. Not only was King Gaia severely injured, but Dai-Yun himself also paid a corresponding price. When fighting against Yizishu in the silence field, the devouring power attached to the field was one of the reasons why those bloody lights of death disappeared out of thin air. The huge power of the wronged souls was completely devoured by him. Dai-Yun actually had a similar situation to King Gaia, but after all, he had the ultimate evil, which could easily suppress the power of those wronged souls, and then slowly digest and absorb them. This is also where he has an advantage over King Gaia. He only needs time to slowly get rid of the influence of the power of the wronged souls, but King Gaia can't. Because King Gaia is not complete now. Although Tang Liu took back most of the energy cores of the dark demon evil god tiger, he still sent a small part to another planet to complete the protagonist of that world. Zhou King. What Dai-Yun needs to do is to take back the missing part of King Gaia when he has the chance in the future. In this way, even if he encounters an attack similar to the light of death that can affect spiritual consciousness again, King Gaia will not suffer anymore. The author was a little stuck today, so he posted half an hour late. I am still working hard on the manuscripts, and I hope to have a burst of success. Thank you to the friends who voted for recommendations and monthly tickets. See you tomorrow. Chapter 577, Fake Death Coffin and Backup Plan. When Tang Liu released that small part of the dark demon evil god tiger's energy core, he did not expect the current situation. After all, human emotions are the most difficult to calculate, not to mention that it spans a full 10,000 years. Originally, the dark demon evil god tiger was resurrected just to allow it to have more cultivation around him, so that it can become a tool for Dai-Yun to become more powerful. But Tang Liu did not expect that everything would become different when he chose to name the dark demon evil god tiger, the nemesis of soul beasts and the evil spirit, a soul beast that he originally regarded as a tool, King Gaia. After that, Tang Liu was not without corresponding concerns, so he also tried to use his soul power to make up for the missing part of King Gaia. But now it seems that the lack of existence can have such a great impact on a living being, even Haolan's magic cannot reverse this impact. This may have involved rules, which Tang Liu cannot understand now. Fortunately, Tang Liu also has a solution, which is the pushing coffin he told Dai-Yun before. 10,000 years ago, he did not even know that there would be an assessment related to new traversers in the future. But even so, he also vaguely felt that he had to let himself end with the horn of the end of the era when the era of Dao Yi ended. At first, it was just a vague intuition. It was simple. He was born in the era of Dao Yi, but the story of Douluo would not end there. And, whether it was the system that was now completely dead, or the sixth elder who returned home at the finals of the All-Continent Advanced Soul Master Academy Elite Competition in front of Wuhan City and Wuhan Hall, All these things were telling Tang Liu that his journey in this world was far from over, at least the end would not be the end of Dao Yi. But if he could not go back at the end of Dao Yi, then it would involve a very important issue. That is lifespan. Even though Tang Liu had 3 martial souls, and the 3rd martial soul was a very high-level Shaolin magic, he still could not break the limit of lifespan. The limit of a soul master is level 99. Today's extreme Douluo was once called peerless Douluo. But even a soul master who has reached the limit of human beings can only live for more than 100 years at most, and few can even live for more than 200 years. In this case, the end of the journey is not in the era of Dao Yi, so how can he reach the so-called end with a lifespan of only 200 years? The story of Douluo continent spans several thousand years, and a mere 200 years is too small. And if you want to break the limit of lifespan, you can only go to the God realm and achieve the position of God. But what do the gods in this God realm think? What they want is the life of Tang Liu, an outsider. But it seems that they have been threatened by someone before. Because of this, they did not take the initiative to attack Tang Liu. Instead, they chose to let Tang San, who inherited the throne of Shuri God, to kill Tang Liu personally. Tang Liu knew this, so he was prepared before the God War. He cooperated with Daimyo Bei, the prince of Xingluo Empire and the heir of the future empire, to build a National Master's Mansion. That National Master's Mansion is actually the current White Tiger Duke's mansion, which is a backhand used to deceive the gods. And the means that Tang Liu really used to save his life were actually 5 coffins. As long as the 5 coffins are not destroyed, his body will not die. So even if he was chopped by the blood sword of Shuri and pierced by the golden trident, he would eventually wake up in the connection center of the 5 coffins. He was able to fake his death and escape, retreat behind the scenes, and wait for the day of transcendence. But as the old saying goes, plans often cannot keep up with changes. Tang Liu arranged everything for himself, but he never thought that Jin Ringsu would block a fatal golden trident for him. He also didn't expect that Su Yu would choose to take his place and bear the subsequent impact of the fatal injury of the golden trident. That was the angry full-strength attack of Tang San, who was a double god, and it already contained the will of the 5 great gods in the god realm to kill him. But Su Yu, with a human body, took it all and achieved a heart without regrets. So it was originally your backup plan for yourself, but you gave it to me because you wanted to save me. In the pavilion, Jin Ringsu stared at the gentle and handsome young man in front of her, and his words just now kept echoing in her mind. If I don't give you this chance, I won't see you now, Tang Liu said indifferently, and Su Yu. Since you all saved me, how could I watch you die for me? And I don't just have this one backup plan, although even now, Tang Liu still can't understand why Jin Ringsu and Su Yu can be so decisive. He has felt too much malice before. The bullying in the orphanage is not physical, and the oppression in the society is everywhere. Everything makes the wounded child a little unbelievable now. It turns out that there are people who are so unreserved for him. After a long time of crossing over, he thought that his mother Yin might be one, and his father Tang Hao might be one. But he never thought that people who are not related to him can be so decisive. The determination is so bright that it is almost burning him. This unreservedness is different from the kindness he has felt before, very different. While he was somewhat afraid to accept it, he could not help wanting to get closer to that light, and then return the same light, so that that light could also see his fiery soul hidden under the wound. When that light passed through the wound and reached the soul, but did not bring pain, the dead child covered in wounds in the darkness suddenly found that he could no longer leave. Whether it was Yin, Tang Hao, Jin Ringsu, or Su Yu, their respective lights had special meanings to the soul that was once unwanted, and that actually made him begin to feel complete. Jin Ringsu tried to hold back, but in the end she couldn't. But the other backup plans are not perfect, otherwise your body would not still be in a dying state, right? She still couldn't forget the hideous wound that pierced Tang Liu's chest and abdomen, and just thinking about it was shocking. Tang Liu's eyes darkened, but his face was still gentle. At least I'm still here now, which means that my method is useful. But the wounded child still had to recognize one thing: even the light that could bring warmth would suddenly burn people at some point. It's not that he didn't expect Tang San to make such a choice, but he didn't expect him to be so decisive. Although Tang San wanted Yin to be completely resurrected, and there were other reasons, Tang Liu was still very unhappy. You suddenly told me this at this time, what's going to happen? Jin Ringsu asked worriedly. Tang Liu took her hand, smiled and comforted her. Those 5 coffins are not only my backup, but also the reason why the 5 of them can survive until now. Once the pushing of the coffins begins, the power that holds them together will slowly weaken. After the pushing of the coffins is successful, the 5 of them can come out. But at the same time, it is also the time when my power is the weakest, and you will definitely discover my existence by then. The last time I prevented my niece's consciousness from being separated, he should have noticed it. With the combined impact of these two things, my exposure is inevitable. Jin Ringsu held Tang Liu's hand tightly. What do you need me to do? After he knows my whereabouts, he will definitely take action. I will then start playing hide and seek with them to attract their attention. And what you have to do is to take the 5 of them and find an opportunity to invade the God realm, lie dormant in it, and wait for the chaos to come. Tang Liu, after faking my death and escaping, and retreating behind the scenes, I got the script of the villain boss, Dai Yun's, shivering expressionlessly. Good, so scary. Fill in the holes. Fill in the holes. The author is still a bit stuck, and plans to write a detailed outline before writing. I will post one chapter for now. Originally, this chapter did not have these plots to fill in the gaps, but because the author is still a little vague about how to write the last part of the body sect copy, so this chapter was written like this, but after finishing it, I actually found that it was quite suitable. I don't know if the friends who read this have figured out the ending of the previous fight one and what Tang Liu was doing. If you don't understand, you can ask me in the comment area or the book friend group. After all, the author's previous update cycle span is too long. Cover face JPG. After the last copy of the body sect is over, it's time to go to the Holy Spirit Church. After experiencing 1 or 2 key events in it, there is a time jump, directly to the age of 17, preparing to start the All-Continent Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Fighting Competition. Everyone guess whether Dai Yun's will represent Shrek, the Holy Spirit Church, or the Snow Demon Sect. Dodge, thanks to the friends who voted for the monthly ticket. Maybe we can see each other later, or maybe tomorrow. Save my life. Save my life. The author is trying hard to save his manuscripts, but his recent inspiration is a bit slower than his typing speed. Guilty JPG. Chapter 578 Inheritance Trial. After saying that, Tang Liu raised his hand, and blue light condensed into several mysterious runes, which he handed to Jin Ringsu in front of him. These are teleportation spell runes. After crushing them, they can take you out of the God realm. If you encounter troubles that you can't solve, or complete the mission, you can use them to leave the God realm, Tang Liu explained. Jin Ringsu put away the blue runes one by one, and then couldn't help but said, "How long will we stay there?" Well, it will still take more than 20 years, which is still quite a long time, but Jin Ringsu breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, it's only more than 20 years, but you will have to stay in Douluo continent for 10,000 years again. Tang Liu smiled. Don't worry, if everything goes well, by the time you enter the God realm, I will have successfully transcended. A mere 10,000 years is just a blink of an eye. But after you go to the God realm, you must keep your composure, and don't be impulsive and go directly to the door. Although that actually doesn't have much impact, we still reached an agreement with them after all. Jin Ringsu looked at Tang Liu, who suddenly became earnest, and was faintly dissatisfied. What if I just can't help it and want to vent your anger? Tang Liu patiently stroked her hair. Don't worry, you are no longer the scum angel god. After the transformation, once you enter the God realm, you will be able to complete transcendence. At that time, you can beat anyone you want, unless the 5 God Kings join forces. In short, we must survive. After all, the reputation of being the first to breach the contract is always a bit bad. What if no one is willing to cooperate with us in the future? Jin Ringsu was still angry. What about the former sea god and Shura god? Where are they? I'll go and catch them first. Right, Tang Liu couldn't help but smile. Don't worry about them, someone will take care of those 2 guys. Jin Ringsu was reluctant. Okay, but the expression on her beautiful face always seemed like she was itching to show off. It was as if she had been suppressed for too long and wanted to find someone to compete with. This is also a common problem among soul masters. 2 months later, the inheritance trial held every 5 years by the body sect is about to begin. Early in the morning, all the disciples of the body sect gathered in the huge martial arts arena, facing the high platform built yesterday, looking at the sect master Douluo and other elders on it. The disciples who were of the right age and could participate in this inheritance trial stood neatly in front of the high platform. The youngsters who were not old enough stood in a row at the back, staring at the backs of the senior brothers and sisters in front of them with their big, bright eyes curiously. Dai Yun's also stood in the team of disciples of the right age, and beside him were Long Hanao, Vina, and a young man who looked quite shy. That young man was Gu Tong, the young man with the eye martial spirit in the body sect. Although Dai Yun's had awakened his spiritual eyes for the second time, his journey in the body sect should have ended. But Tang Liu told him that if he wanted to push the coffin, he had to find a way to enter the Benwu Pavilion in the inheritance trial of the body sect. So Dai Yun's was standing here now. On the high platform, the leader of the body sect, Dubu Si, did not say much nonsense. He simply said, "I hope everyone can gain enlightenment in the trial," and then started the inheritance trial. A magnificent dark green light emerged from Dubu Si's hands, and it continued to grow stronger as his soul power was output, almost covering the daytime sunlight and depriving everyone present of their vision. Junior brother, in the inheritance trial, the sooner you find a way to escape, the better. Otherwise, you can only wait for the trial to end, or die in the trial, which means failure. Taking advantage of the last period of time before the trial began, Long Hanai whispered to Dai Yun's beside him, "The inheritance trial is actually a special secret realm, and the participating disciples will be randomly teleported to various places. As long as you can find a way to escape from it, then the trial can be completed, and the experiences in it will turn into insights, stimulating the second awakening of the martial soul. If you accidentally die in the trial, the insights you can gain will be very few." Dai Yun's asked carefully, "Is it just the spirit that enters the trial secret realm, or?" Long Hanayu shook his head. "The inheritance trial was left by the founder of the body sect, and the means are extremely sophisticated. I went in once before, but I couldn't tell whether it was just mental power or my real body that went in. Moreover, each trial is different, and I can't tell you about my last experience." Dai Yun's nodded thoughtfully. "In short, junior brother, you must be more careful after entering. If you have the chance, you must meet up with the others." As soon as Long Hanayu finished this sentence, the dark green light in Dubusi's hand also reached its strongest moment. Being in it, Dai Yun's couldn't even see the situation around him clearly. There was only the dazzling dark green light in his vision. When the light was extremely bright and the scene in his eyes was only blank, Dai Yun suddenly felt a strong pressure and a sudden sense of suffocation. Obviously, he was standing on the martial arts field with many disciples of the body sect just a moment ago, but now, he has come to another place. When his vision was restored, he saw a deep and incomparable dark blue. The soul power was running, driving the power of space, pushing away all the dark blue around him, and Dai Yun's felt lighter on his body, and the previous pressure disappeared without a trace. Although he still couldn't breathe because there was no air, his soul power was enough to support him to use internal breath instead of breathing for about half an hour, which was not a big problem. At this time, Dai Yun's could concentrate on looking around. It seems that he should be in a difficult birth point in the deep sea. After confirming the surrounding environment, Dai Yun's wanted to swim to the surface of the water to leave this high-pressure and oxygen-deficient environment first. But just as he was about to act, he keenly sensed a wave of energy fluctuations not far away. Turning his head, he found that a person was struggling in the deep sea, and it seemed that he would soon die. At the moment of life and death, a thick bronze color suddenly lit up on the legs of that person, and he quickly went to the surface of the water with his body. It turned out to be the second awakening of the bronze-level body martial soul. Under the pressure of this deep sea, the disciple of the body sect actually awakened for the second time. And this was just after entering the inheritance trial. What benefits can the disciples of the body sect get if they complete this inheritance trial? Dai Yun's thought in surprise. It's just a pity that the position they are in is too deep. Even if the disciple has awakened for the second time, he still can't completely break through to the surface of the water. Dai Yun's watched the disciple's figure in the bronze light. After jumping up dozens of meters in the water, it seemed to have run out of fuel and slowly fell down in despair. Fortunately, the disciple was lucky enough today, because Dai Yun's was still here and was not affected by the deep sea. In the flash of silver light, Dai Yun's rushed out, and the power of space was at his command, and he came to the side of the disciple in almost a blink of an eye. He grabbed the collar of his neck, pushed open the surrounding seawater, and took him to the distant sea surface with flashing. After dozens of seconds, there was a wow sound, and the sea surface was pushed open by a force, stirring up high waves. Then, Dai Yun's rushed out of the gap on the sea surface with a disciple of the body sect, and flew in the air with the red and blue wings spread out behind him, looking around. The sea surface was endless, and even the shadow of any isolated island could not be seen. Daiyun's was a little helpless. What kind of devilish start was this? But he had no other choice, so he grabbed the still unconscious disciple of the body sect, randomly chose a direction, and flew towards it. Chapter 579, Daiyun's is drifting. Daiyun's didn't know how long he had been flying before the disciple of the body sect in his hand slowly woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the endless sea below. The next second he started to scream, who are you and why am I here?" He was spitting out garbled words and struggling hard. Then with a swish, the collar of the shirt that Daiyun's was holding was torn open. The disciple fell to the sea with tears streaming down his face, and a series of "ah." The disciple had never felt such a wonderful feeling of being on solid ground. He sat down on it and gasped for breath. Although he was shivering from the cold, it was very exhausting to splash around in the sea. Thank you," he said to Daiyun's again. Daiyun smiled and said he didn't care, then asked, "What's your name? Is this your first time participating in the inheritance trial?" "My name is Liu. As for the trial you mentioned," he had a very confused look on his face. "What is that?" Daiyun frowned and continued to ask, "Do you remember how you got here?" Liu looked very distressed, and shook his head as he spoke. "As soon as I opened my eyes, I found myself under the sea. As for why I was there, I don't know. Where's the martial soul? Where's the soul power? Can I still use it?" Martial soul? Liu was stunned for a moment, then began to feel it quietly, but in the next moment he said in horror, I can't contact my martial soul." Daiyun's voice was steady and powerful at this time, calming Liu down. "Where's the soul power?" "The soul power is still there." This was a situation that Long Hanyu had not mentioned before. Could it be the special content of this trial, sealing the martial soul and closing the memory? But why was he not affected? Although Daiyun's had some guesses, he still had a thoughtful look. Seeing him like this, Liu also stood up from the ice nervously, but almost slipped. After stabilizing his body, he asked carefully, "That? Benefactor, is there something wrong with me? Am I going to die?" Daiyun's glanced at him and found that there was a little bit of subtle fear in his eyes. So he said, "Just call me Daiyun's. You should still be my senior brother." "Senior brother? So, we actually belong to the same sect." Liu's eyes lit up, but then dimmed again. "But why don't I have any memory at all?" "Don't worry too much, now we are just entering the inheritance trial. No memory, can't use martial spirit, it should be just the situation of this trial," Daiyun's comforted. Inheritance trial? Liu thought hard for a while, but still to no avail. He still looked at Daiyun's. "Then what should we do now?" "First find a way to leave the sea," Daiyun said, and began to use the power of space to control the ice under his feet, like a boat carrying the two people, and sailing in the direction previously selected. The sea was turbulent, but Daiyun's control was also very strong. Even when he and Liu were standing on the smooth ice, their bodies were quite stable. After half an hour of sailing, the scene in their eyes did not change at all. It was still the endless blue sea. In such an endless blue, Daiyun's and Liu seemed too small. For a moment, both of them felt an indescribable sense of loneliness at the same time. Liu sighed, "There's ocean everywhere. When can we find a way out?" Daiyun's frowned and thought, maybe the way out is not on the sea. Liu was stunned and said, "If it is not on the sea, could it be in the sky?" He looked up and saw a cloudless sky, a deep blue, and a scorching sun in the sky. It didn't look like there was a way out. "I thought I could find land on the sea before, so I was still wandering on the sea. But now it seems that this sea may be endless, so how should we go now?" Liu has completely relied on his nominal junior brother, and he didn't think there was anything wrong. Daiyun's thought for a moment and said to Liu, "Let's continue to look for any place that can be used as a landmark on the sea. Then, you stay there, and I'll go to the bottom of the sea to check the situation." Liu agreed without objection. "Okay." The two of them drifted on the sea again, and in a blink of an eye, it was dusk. The sea was covered with blood-red light, and the half-sunken sunset in the distance looked quite shocking. Perhaps darkness was really Daiyun's luck. When the sun completely sank into the sea level, they saw the shadow of a small island in the distance. Daiyun's eyes lit up, and he took off from the ice with Liu and flew over there at full speed. In order to find the so-called landmark, it was actually because the sea water was flowing. If Daiyun's went to the bottom of the sea to check the situation at that time, when he came back, Liu might have drifted to somewhere. The small island they found was really small. From the air, it might not be even 1/3 the size of the martial arts field of the body sect. There was a shallow beach and a few sparse coconut trees, and nothing else. After landing on the island, Dai Yun's first walked around the entire island, eliminating dangers while collecting a lot of dead branches and leaves. Chen Lu picked all the coconuts from the coconut trees and used them as food. Although they were in the trial, their bodies were still tired and hungry. After a day, Dai Yun's was fine, but Chen Lu was very hungry. Since his soul power was still usable, it was not difficult for him to open the coconut. Huh? I'm alive. Chen Lu couldn't help but sigh after swallowing a big mouthful of sweet coconut juice. Dai Yun's used the power of thunder and lightning to ignite the dead branches and leaves he picked up, and a fire started, bringing a ray of light and warmth in the dark night. Rejecting the coconut handed over by Chen Lu, Dai Yun said, "I'll go to the bottom of the sea to take a look. Senior brother, please be careful. It's better to keep a few more of these coconuts. They may be our only source of fresh water here." Chen Lu nodded, said yes, and then carefully collected the remaining coconuts, took off his coat and wrapped them well. Dai Yun's walked to the seaside, jumped into the water in a flash, and began to dive quickly. This trial secret realm is very strange. He can't feel whether he entered with his mental power or his physical body. If it was the physical body that entered the trial, why didn't his storage soul guide appear at the same time? But if it was only the mental power that came in, why did he feel hungry? Is it an advanced delusion? Dai Yun's didn't think so. This trial secret realm seemed to involve something deeper. What he had to do now was to find a way out as soon as possible, otherwise he and Chen Lu would probably starve to death or die of thirst here. At this moment, Dai Yun's deeply understood why Long Hanyu told him that the sooner he got out of the trial, the better. It was to suffer less. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 580, The Guidance of Fate in Time. The dark deep sea was extremely quiet, and Dai Yun's couldn't even see any living creatures in the sea. If Chen Lu was still around, Dai Yun's would definitely tell him to save some coconuts. That might not only be their only fresh water, but also their only source of food. At first, Dai Yun's thought that such a large sea must be full of fish and there would be no shortage of food. But now it seems that he guessed wrong. After swimming all the way down, not only did he not see any fish, he didn't even see any seaweed. It didn't look like the underwater world in his impression at all. After continuing to dive for a while and finding that the seawater was still bottomless, Dai Yun stopped, frowned, and looked down through the seawater pushed away by the power of space. It's not a good idea to search blindly like this. He might not be able to find a way out until he dies. But besides this, does he have any other way now? Dai Yun's thought, should he try to use the power of time to peek into the future? It's not that he hadn't thought of this method before, but the ability to use time to spy on the future failed when he took the initiative to play in the finals of the All-Continent Advanced Soul Master Academy Fighting Soul competition. After using the ability, all he could see was an unknown darkness, as if some power was preventing him from seeing the future. And in fact, he had never really foreseen the future actively. The few times in the All-Continent Advanced Soul Master Academy Fighting Soul competition were all passive spying, triggered by some things. After the power of time was triggered, he could slightly influence the direction of the future he saw with his own thoughts, but that was all. So do you want to try it? Let's try it. Dai Yun's made a decision quickly and mobilized the power of time in his body. The whole person's aura suddenly became mysterious. His eyes seemed to have lost focus for a moment when he opened them, but it seemed that he was looking at countless things. But after a few seconds, that mysterious feeling faded, and his expression also took on a bit of dejection. There was no result. He saw nothing, only a foggy darkness. But why? Dai Yun's was puzzled until he suddenly thought of the scene when he fought with Yi Zishu that day. That day, the three forces of darkness, evil, and time in his body ran wild at the same time. The darkness turned into a lightless and silent domain. The evil cooperated with a devouring talent and the power of space to form an unimaginable suppression. Finally, with the static power of time, Yi Zishu was successfully dragged into the lightless and silent domain, and it was difficult for this extreme Douluo to fight back. What was the situation at that time? Especially how was the static power of time exerted? It was the Eye of Destiny. After thinking of this, Dai-Yun's immediately closed his eyes, and then the vertical eye with dazzling rose gold on his forehead opened. Then, he mobilized the power of time in his body again. This time, the power of time seemed to be faintly responding to the Eye of Destiny in some strange way, and then the next moment, the vision in Dai-Yun's Eye of Destiny was instantly occupied by one picture after another. First, there was an almost endless deep sea, all the way down. Then there was a blue energy shield that seemed to isolate something. Then, there was an altar with array patterns in the energy shield. Exit. But Dai-Yun's was a little confused. Could the predicted future be so accurate? It actually pointed out the place he wanted to go directly to him. It always felt that this was not just the power of time, but there seemed to be another force assisting. First, it determined his will, and then accurately located the future he wanted to see. It was completely different from his previous experience of peeping into the future. And, the power of time was obviously his own innate ability. Why must it be truly used through the Eye of Destiny? All of this was obviously unreasonable, so what happened when the three-eyed golden lion chose to guide his destiny? Dai-Yun's couldn't figure it out for the time being, and he didn't really want to tangle with these at this time. The most important thing at the moment was to go back and meet Chen Liu, and then go together to find the place where the blue light shield was, and leave this endless ocean world. After making the decision, Dai-Yun's took back the Eye of Destiny and immediately returned at full speed. With a powerful memory ability of his spiritual eyes, he returned to the sea in the direction he came from. He also saw the island not far away and the light of fire on the island. Dai-Yun's breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, he was lucky to find this island. Even with the island as a landmark reference, the place where he came out of the water was still quite far away when he returned from the deep sea. If there was no island as a guarantee, he might be completely separated from Chen Liu after he came back again. Even if Chen Liu's soul power can still be used now, he will not live long in this world full of ocean. It is true that this is just a trial, but Dai-Yun still can't bear to watch others die like this, and it is still a senior brother in the body sect. He has never met Chen Liu before, but he thinks he should be a good person like other senior brothers and sisters. In a flash, Dai-Yun's returned to the island. Chen Liu, who is meditating, also opened his eyes at this time and saw Dai-Yun's figure at a glance. "Brother, I found a way out." Chen Liu was stunned, and then he was also happy. "So it's really under the sea." Dai-Yun's also smiled and nodded. "Yes. Let's rest here for one night. Tomorrow morning, we will go to the sea to find the way out." "Okay," Chen Liu said, and handed all the coconuts wrapped in his coat to Dai-Yun's. "Junior brother, you have worked hard, and these are also for you to keep." Dai-Yun's did not refuse, but just smiled and peeled a coconut and drank the sweet coconut juice inside. The kindness of mutual return is so heartwarming. Even if that kindness may be only a small trace. Under the deep sea, Dai-Yun's opened the Eye of Destiny on his forehead, and Chen Liu followed behind him. With the protection of Dai-Yun's special power, Chen Liu did not need to worry about the pressure of the deep sea, and he did not even need to act by himself. He just needed to maintain his internal breath. This time, the two of them went to the sea with the purpose of leaving here. Naturally, Dai-Yun's had also made sufficient preparations. The part of the seawater pushed open by the force of space had already been filled with air. Therefore, the place where the two were at this time looked like a big bubble. Even though there was oxygen in the bubble that could provide breathing, the two still used internal breath instead of breathing. Because this air was brought down by Dai-Yun's for emergency use. If the internal breath really couldn't hold on, it wouldn't be too late to breathe again. With the guidance of the Eye of Destiny and the power of time, the two went down all the way, and finally saw the huge shield emitting faint blue light in the already dark deep sea. When he saw the blue light, Dai-Yun's eyes lit up, and he urged the power of space to lead the two people to flash there at an accelerated speed. But if it weren't for the support of the majestic soul power in his body, he might have been unable to hold on long ago if he kept using the power of space to teleport a person and a piece of air in the deep sea. Naturally, once again thanked the dark demon evil god tiger energy that he had not yet absorbed. And he came to this inheritance trial because he wanted to save the owners of those energies. Thinking of this, Dai-Yun's eyes became more determined. He must find a way to enter Benwu Pavilion in this trial. Then push the coffin to help Elder King Gaia. 3 chapters today. The first half of the inheritance trial copy is finished. The second half should be a little longer. The author is working hard on typing. Thank you to the friends who voted for recommendations and monthly tickets. See you tomorrow. Chapter 581 Desert World. The process of entering the blue light shield was smoother than Dai Yun's had imagined. No monsters attacked them, and the blue barrier did not stop them. When the two approached, they stepped into it easily, just like reaching out to push open a half-open door. There was no seawater in the world inside the blue barrier, so naturally, after entering it, Dai Yun's and Chen Lu fell rapidly. When Dai Yun's felt the buoyancy disappear, he opened the wings of the Ice and Fire Dragon King in time and landed slowly on the ground with Chen Lu. Not only was there no seawater in this blue barrier, it was even full of air, allowing them to breathe in it unscrupulously. After landing, the two's eyes were also attracted by the extremely conspicuous altar, and they walked towards it at the same time. When they got closer, they found that the altar was as tall as a person. After climbing up, many mysterious runes were engraved on the dark surface of the altar, and with the intertwined lines, they finally formed an incomprehensible magic circle. The magic circle also glowed the moment the two stepped onto the altar, until a square light gate was formed in the center. It should be the exit. Dai Yun's and Chen Lu looked at each other and walked towards the light door at the same time. "Junior brother, see you outside," Chen Lu smiled, and at the moment the light door appeared, he seemed to remember something. Dai Yun's understood and smiled back. Okay, the feeling of walking into the light door was very special, but not unfamiliar. In an instant, the eyes were filled with unimaginable light, resulting in a blank vision. This was exactly the same situation as when entering this trial secret realm. But when the light dissipated and the vision was restored, Dai Yun's was not on the martial arts field. Instead, it was an endless expanse of yellow sand. A gust of hot wind blew, blowing up the misty fine sand and instantly covering his face. Feeling the waves of heat coming from his skin, Dai Yun's couldn't help but, could it be that the light door was not actually the exit? But why didn't I see Chen Lu around? Is the trial not over yet? Dai Yun's looked up, squinting his eyes at the ruthless sun in the center of the sky, and the wings of the Ice and Fire Dragon King spread out behind him. The elemental power of the ultimate fire made him fearless of the high temperature of the desert. And the elemental power of the ultimate ice dissipated the heat around him, leaving only the refreshing coolness. The powerful memory of the spiritual soul master began to work at this time. When passing through the light gate, the faint whispering voice gradually became clear in his mind. The Sea of Courage. The drowned people chased the sea like crazy, preferring to endure the loneliness of the sea rather than being brave and looking for a ray of life in the depths of the vast sea. Just like the truth will not only float on the surface, the iceberg will not completely reveal its true appearance. Break the shackles and break out of the limitations of thinking. Maybe going down is the real sea surface. This sentence seems to be talking about a previous world that was all ocean, and the exit of that world is in the deep sea, not on the sea surface where there is nothing. So, is it something like a clearance hint or a clearance conclusion? Does that mean that the light gate he passed through is actually the exit to escape the trial, as he guessed? After entering, Dai Yun's and Chen Lu should have finished the trial. But now he seems to be still in the trial and has not successfully left. According to the words heard in the light gate, if you want to find a way out in that ocean world, it should depend on whether the disciples who enter it have the courage to face the deep sea. Even if you may not have enough strength to reach the blue barrier, perhaps as long as you have the determination, you can directly enter the blue barrier and leave through the light gate on the altar. But what does this have to do with him? Why don't you let him pass the trial? Just because the deep sea environment is completely useless to him, so he is judged to have cheated and asked to retake the exam? Then why did Chen Lu, who won the trial without doing anything, go out? Dai Yun said that he had enough evidence to suspect that this broken inheritance trial was targeting him. But in the end, he just went out later, and he was not sure whether he could find a way to enter the Benwu Pavilion after completing the trial. So for now, staying in the trial secret realm for the time being is the best situation for him. In the desert, the young man with red and blue wings folded on his backside, and then the Eye of Destiny on his forehead opened, guiding him in the direction he wanted to go. Before he had walked far, Dai Yun's, relying on the Eye of Destiny, keenly sensed a somewhat violent energy fluctuation nearby. He paused in his steps, quickly changed direction, and his figure flashed quickly towards the place where the energy fluctuation came from. Not long after, Dai Yun saw a small pool under the sand dunes, and several disciples of the body sect fighting with a giant flesh worm by the pool. The flesh worm was 5 meters long, blood red, covered with hideous spikes, and a mouth the same size as its head was full of disgusting fangs. The disciples of the body sect who fought with it were barehanded, and some were scratched by the spikes on its body, covered in blood. Even the soul power defense all over the body did not play a big role. The flesh worm roared. Although the spikes on its body were good defensive and offensive tools, the fists of the disciples of the body sect did not do any harm to it. Those fists covered with soul power were like iron and stone. Every time they hit the soft body of the flesh worm, they would create a dent and some blood plasma with a bad smell. The attack of the disciple of the body sect who was leading the attack was even more fierce. Every attack seemed to be mixed with mental power, and there was a hint of intention. Dai looked closely and found that he actually knew that person. It was Brother Yu, who went out to the starred-out Great Forest to borrow a ring with him last time. But even Yu, who had reached the level of Soul King, was suppressed by the flesh worm soon after. He had many new wounds on his body and was obviously unable to cope with it. Although Dai had been watching the situation over there, he did not stop his steps. When the disciples of the body sect were about to be defeated and swallowed by the flesh worm one by one, he just happened to approach, allowing the flesh worm to enter his attack range. The dragon wings behind him spread out, and the boy flew high up while raising his right hand towards the giant flesh worm. The space where the flesh worm was located suddenly stagnated, and the movement that was about to bite the disciples of the body sect also stopped. But if you look closely, you can still see that its body is struggling inconspicuously, and it keeps making sharp hisses from its mouth. Dai attack did not stop there. He just threw his hand, and the terrifying lightning rushed out, and in the blink of an eye it struck the body of the flesh worm. With a boom of thunder, a bloody cut was directly split on the body of the flesh worm, and it was almost directly split in two. Chapter 582, Will the trial continue? The defense of this flesh worm is not very strong. If the disciples of the body sect can still use soul skills, they probably won't take it seriously. But unfortunately, they should be like Chen Liu, unable to release their martial spirits at present. Although it was almost split in half, the flesh worm's vitality is also amazing. It has not died after such an injury, but the hissing sound from its mouth is more sharp, obviously in pain. Because the space around it was solidified by Dai, even if the place hit by the thunder was bloody, the charred meat and blood plasma still stopped in the air and did not fall into the pool below. At this time, Dai came to Yu and others. With a wave of his hand, he used the power of space to crush the flesh worm to death, and then used teleportation to throw it out of the pool. He then looked at the bloody disciples of the body sect. The flesh worm, which was not worth mentioning to him, made it difficult for several people to resist. After realizing this, Dai couldn't help but frown. He then said, "Brother Yu, how are you?" Yu glanced at him. His expression was full of unfamiliarity, but there was no trace of vigilance or suspicion in his eyes. He coughed first, wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and then smiled and said, "Brother, you are very skilled. We are fine, thank you for your help. But I don't know your name." Dai understood that it was indeed the same situation as Chen Liu, who could not use his martial spirit and his memory was sealed. But why was he not affected at all? His martial spirit could still be used, and his memory was intact. Could this be the reason why he did not leave the trial with Chen Liu? Dai had thought that Chen Liu might have entered this new desert world like himself. It was just because of the random transmission mechanism of this trial secret realm that separated them. However, after the light gate appeared, Dai was sure that the other party had recovered his memory, so he was sure that it was a way out of the trial, and that after entering this desert world, he suspected that this secret realm was targeting him. But it is not important to worry about these things now. Dai went forward to check the injuries of several disciples of the body sect. "Brother, I am Dai. Now we are in the inheritance trial, it is normal that you don't remember me," he said while checking the wounds of several other disciples. From this point of view, these disciples still have a lot of serious injuries. Dai skillfully closed the large wounds that were bleeding with the power of space, and then used weak lightning to burn the wounds to stop the bleeding completely. Due to limited conditions, Dai could only do this simple treatment. But everyone's soul power is still there, so as long as the wound heals and does not endanger their lives, they can slowly heal later. Moreover, lightning can paralyze nerves, so even if the skin and flesh are burned, several disciples did not feel much pain for the time being, and thanked Dai one by one. Dai said bluntly, and finally walked in front of Yu. As the disciple with the highest cultivation level among this group of disciples, and the main force against the bug, Yu's injury was undoubtedly more serious, with one of his palms pierced directly. Fortunately, the bones and large blood vessels were not injured, so he still needed to stop the bleeding and seal the wound. After thanking Daiyun's like other disciples, Yu noticed more things. He couldn't suppress his excitement. Can Junior Brother Dai's martial soul still be used? It should be possible. There were no outsiders present, so there was no need to hide it. But the abilities I use in battle are all my innate abilities, so whether I can release my martial soul or not has no effect. From the beginning of the inheritance trial until now, Daiyun has not actually released his martial soul. But his connection with his martial soul has not disappeared, so it should still be usable. Even if he suddenly finds that he can't release his martial soul, it won't have much impact on his combat power. At most, he will have fewer soul skills to use. That's great, maybe we can get through tonight safely. Yu's eyes were bright, and he whispered, then looked at the clear pool next to him. Now we have a water source. Everyone, don't waste time, take as much as you can, and take it back to meet everyone. He said the last sentence to the other disciples of the body sect. Then, Daiyun saw them all took out several containers and started to fill them with water. Seeing this scene, Daiyun was thoughtful. It seems that the resources in this desert world are as scarce as those in the ocean world. Before he came, Yu and his friends might have been short of water for many days. Now that they have found this pool, they will definitely not give up, so they fought with a big bug just now. He looked at the few people who started to pour water into their mouths with their hands after filling the containers, and sighed silently. If every inheritance trial is as cruel as this, it is no wonder that the strength of the body sect is so strong. Brother Yu, how many of us are gathered now? Daiyun waited quietly for Yu to drink enough before asking. Yu sat by the pool and let out a long sigh. He said, there is a building like a ruin in the northwest not far from here. There are probably more than a dozen companions hiding there. There are more than a dozen people. Daiyun glanced at the containers full of water on Yu and the others, then walked to the pool and released the wings of the Ice and Fire Dragon King. The Ice Dragon King, which represents extreme cold, flapped its left wing gently, and the temperature around it dropped rapidly. The pool in front of them was frozen into ice almost in the blink of an eye. The power of space then surged, pulling up the huge inverted cone-shaped ice block from the sand dunes and quietly suspending it in front of the few people. If it weren't for the fact that his innate ability had been strengthened several times, Daiyun wouldn't have been able to do this so easily. After all, in the past, his power of space could only allow him to teleport within a range of 5 meters. Yu and the others stared at Daiyun, who looked relaxed, in amazement, and then looked at the containers full of water hanging on their bodies. They still wanted to bring back as much water as possible, but now Daiyun wanted to move the entire water source away. This way of thinking is completely different, or the difference in rank is just too big. But in this way, they don't have to worry about the water problem for a period of time, and they don't have to risk coming to get water every time. Even this time when they go back, the companions guarding over there can drink water directly to their heart's content. Yu stood up excitedly and took the initiative to walk in front. Let's go, I'll lead the way, let's go back now. Not long after, the other disciples of the body sect who stayed behind in the ruins saw their senior brother Yu, who had gone out to find water this morning, coming back with a large piece of ice behind him. All disciples, try to finish the trial within 3 to 5 chapters. Doge, thank you to the friends who voted for recommendations and monthly tickets. See you tomorrow. Chapter 583 The Night of the World. Daiyun didn't expect that there were many familiar faces among the disciples of the body sect who stayed in the ruins. The first one was Long Hanayu, who had red hair and a stern face and was the focus of attention wherever he went. Considering that he was the undisputed number one among the disciples of the body sect in this age group, even though they had no relevant memories now, they still regarded him as the backbone. In addition, Gu Tong, Chen Yu, Zhang Yixi, Wang Yanfeng, these disciples that Daiyun had more or less contacted with before were also there. But Daiyun didn't see Vina among the disciples. It seemed that she hadn't joined them yet, or she was not in the same trial secret realm as them. Daiyun felt that there must be many disciples of the body sect who were undergoing trials in the ocean world he stayed in before. However, that world was obviously not as threatening as this world, because Daiyun had seen several disciples with varying degrees of disability, resting in the shade. After putting down the piece of ice, Daiyun stood silently aside, watching the seriously injured disciples. Daiyun is the youngest of his batch of disciples. Now, Many of the senior brothers and sisters who usually laugh and always like to go to the Benji building for emotional counseling have lost their fighting ability and are even dying. He doesn't know what kind of dangers this desert world contains yet, but those seriously injured senior brothers and sisters have protected others many times in previous dangers. Even if Daiyun still has the memory of well, this is just a trial of inheritance, he still feels a little disappointed after seeing these haggard but optimistic disciples. Soon, Long Hanayu came over. "What's your name, junior brother?" Daiyun's glanced at him. Daiyun's. Long Hanayu nodded. "Thank you for the water source brought back by junior brother Dai. We really need it now, senior brother Long. How many days have you been here?" Daiyun signaled that he was welcome, and then asked his own question. After hearing what Daiyun said, Long Hanayu couldn't help but look at the seriously injured companions. His expression and tone were heavy. "It's been about 3 days. We didn't come here at the beginning, but we found this ruins when we were chased by those monsters. Although it is dilapidated and abandoned, it is at least a defensive fortification, which can make us feel a lot easier when facing those monsters. In these 3 days, we have lost a lot of companions one after another, and there are also many new ones. But generally speaking, there are fewer and fewer people here. Perhaps, we will all be buried here soon." At this moment, even Long Hanayu, a genius disciple in the body sect, did not have much hope for the future. Daiyun's was a little surprised, but thinking about the situation here, perhaps there is no food source, no water source, and there are a lot of monsters around, and the companions around him are still passing away. This powerless situation, no matter how talented, will feel a little bit of despair. "Brother, what did you encounter?" After a moment of silence, Daiyun spoke first. But before he finished his question, he was interrupted by a disciple who came running over. The disciple looked at him a little embarrassed and said, "Hello, junior brother, thank you for bringing back the water. But we are facing some problems now, and we may need your help." Long Hanayu asked curiously, "What's wrong?" The disciple was even more embarrassed. "All of our soul powers can't melt the ice brought back by junior brother. The temperature of the ice is lower than you can imagine. Without soul power, your hands will be directly frozen." Daiyun smiled and walked towards the ice. "It's okay, I'll help. The Ice Dragon King is a well-deserved owner of the ultimate ice. Even if he only has half a wing on him now, he can easily exert the power of nearly 200 degrees below zero. Naturally, it is not something that these disciples with the highest soul power but Soul Emperor can easily melt." The disciple followed closely. "Sorry to bother you, junior brother," Long Hanayu also said to Daiyun's from behind. "I'll talk to you in detail later." Daiyun's turned sideways and gave him a thumbs up. The sky gradually darkened. The desert heat is unbearable during the day, but when the sun sets, the heat subsides very quickly, and people can even feel a little cool. The vast sand kingdom is extremely quiet, with only the sound of wind blowing up sand, which makes people's scalps numb in the darkness. It seems that there are some terrifying things hidden in those unclear shadows. On the ruins of the ruins, all the disciples of the body sect who can still move hold torches, look around vigilantly, and pass messages to each other in silence and efficiency, without any unnecessary communication. At the highest point of the entire ruins, there are 2 figures standing. They are Daiyun's and Long Hanayu. Once this desert enters night, the monsters hiding under the yellow sand during the day will slowly wake up. When the moonlight appears, those monsters will launch a full-scale attack. Before I found this relic, I had already suffered a lot. Even if we have this relic to hide now, we have lost a lot of companions. Long Hanayu looked indifferently at the yellow sand outside the relic that fell into the darkness, and said to Daiyun's beside him, "In this desert world, the night represents death, danger and ominousness for the disciples of the body sect, but Daiyun's is different. No matter where he is, darkness is an extension of his senses." At this time, he listened to Long Hanayu's story while using the darkness to perceive the situation outside the relic. But the more he explored, the more solemn his expression became. Because the information transmitted back by the darkness did not have any abnormalities, as if the yellow sand was still ordinary yellow sand. After a pause, he asked, "Will the attack continue until dawn?" Long Hanayu thought of the confrontation a few nights ago, and his eyes showed deep fatigue. "Yes, there is no daylight, and the attack will not stop," he nodded. The solemn expression on Daiyun's face deepened. At this moment, there was a movement in the darkness, and he caught it immediately. Something came out from under the yellow sand. Daiyun's looked in that direction instantly, but then turned to the other side. At first, There were only 1 or 2 places, but soon, there were movements all around the ruins. Something had woken up in the darkness and was about to rush out from the endless sea of sand. A strong soul power fluctuation came from Long Hanau. Prepare for battle. His low roar was clearly heard by every disciple of the body sect in the ruins. At the same second, all the disciples of the body sect who could fight all activated their soul power. Their bodies tensed and stared at the gradually approaching black shadows outside. When the roar of an unknown creature suddenly sounded in the dark night. The battle has begun. Chapter 584, Thunder. Among the black shadows that rushed over, there were the big fleshy worms covered with spikes that Yuns had seen this morning, as well as tigers, wolves, jackals, and leopards that looked relatively normal, and some strange monsters covered with tentacles and twisted bodies. Since they could not use their martial spirits, the disciples of the body sect could only fight those monsters in hand-to-hand combat. Even though their cultivation was generally above the soul master, their physical fitness was still not as good as those monsters with natural advantages, and it often took a lot of people to quickly kill one. This was just the beginning. The total number of monsters that appeared in the yellow sand was not large, but the disciples of the body sect were already in a situation where they could not resist. I dare not imagine how the disciples of the body sect would survive when the moonlight appeared and the monsters launched a general attack. Long Hanau did not move at this time, but only dealt with the monsters that occasionally rushed towards them. Every time he made a move, there was a faint silver light flashing on his body, driving the soul power and mental power to surge together, and a random punch could kill a monster that rushed over. After careful observation, Yuns found that there were more than one person who had the same situation as Long Hanau, and they were evenly distributed throughout the ruins. Like Long Hanau, they did not take the initiative to attack. It seems that disciples of the body sect, like Long Hanau, are equivalent to the trump card to deal with those monsters, and are the last line of defense for other disciples who cannot do it as easily as them. Just like the big bug that Yuns killed this morning, if you can still use martial souls and soul skills, these monsters are actually not that scary. They are just minions that can be solved with one move. But what if martial souls and soul skills can't be used? Then you must learn to combine soul power with mental power and find a way to create your own soul skills. If there is no soul skill, then create soul skills. Perhaps this is one of the purposes of this inheritance trial. It not only allows disciples who have not yet awakened for the second time to accelerate their awakening under the stimulation between life and death. It also forces disciples to find a way to create their own soul skills to survive. Therefore, as long as they can successfully complete this inheritance trial, all the disciples of the body sect will be top geniuses who can create their own soul skills. No wonder the body sect is so powerful. It can be said that it is completely padded with human lives. Now these disciples who are fighting monsters have already experienced more than one inheritance trial. If the difficulty of each trial is no less than this, it is equivalent to that these disciples may have experienced more than one death. Nothing can temper the will more than death, so the people of the body sect must be very firm in their hearts, so Yuns will feel that they are more carefree than each other. Isn't that completely indifferent after seeing through life and death? At this moment, thinking of those brothers and sisters who have to go to the Ben building for emotional consultation at any time, Yuns no longer has any contempt in his heart. Perhaps some of them have died in the inheritance trial, and more than once. Even so, they can still be unaffected, and continue to fall in love like nothing happened, and then go to the Ben building for emotional consultation after being frustrated. Yuns admires. Why does this setting of constantly dying and becoming stronger sound so familiar? However, facing a powerful enemy, Yuns did not continue to think about it. He was not like other disciples of the body sect, whose martial spirits were sealed and whose whole body was always in its prime. Naturally, when the disciples of the body sect were somewhat overwhelmed, he was willing to help them take away most of the pressure. After all, he was now also a member of the body sect. In the dark night, the figure of the young man quickly climbed up under the wings behind him, until the light of the torches in the ruins below almost turned into a small orange-red dot. He took a deep breath, raised his hands to the sky, and when the flashes of lightning jumped from his fingertips, the wings of the Ice and Fire Dragon King behind him also lit up. The scarce water elements in the desert were all attracted by the left wing of the Ice Dragon King, and then evaporated and rose by the high temperature of the right wing of the Fire Dragon King, and quickly gathered above the young man's head until a dark cloud formed. Then, it was detonated by the lightning at the fingertips of the young man. Boom! The muffled sound of the thunder spread throughout the desert, causing the disciples of the body sect in the ruins to raise their heads. It felt like a dark cloud pressing directly on the top of the head, with a pale flash of lightning on its surface from time to time. The fleeting light illuminated the figure floating below the dark cloud, and also allowed the people on the ground to see the thunder in the man's hand that was almost connected to the dark cloud. It's a pity that there are too few water elements here. If it was in the previous ocean world, maybe I could directly set off a storm, the boy with the shrill lightning reflected in his eyes murmured between heaven and earth, and then, guided by the darkness, he sent down thunder that could easily bring destruction. Crackle, with a loud bang, the boy used the world as a canvas and easily left a pale irregular brushstroke on it. The fleeting thunder not only stirred up the flying sand, but also easily plundered the life of the monster below. Moreover, there was more than one thunder that could connect the world, but it struck down almost continuously. After each thunderclap, many monsters would lose their lives in the might of heaven and earth. With the help of thunder, the disciples of the body sect suddenly felt the pressure reduced. They excitedly cast their eyes towards the figure in the sky, and even began to rush out of the ruins, actively looking for the monsters that survived the thunder. After noticing that the situation below was temporarily under control, Dayun's also landed next to Long Hanyu again. But even if he was no longer controlling the thunder and lightning in the sky, the dark clouds would still send down thunder and attack the monsters in the dark. Long Hanyu looked at the boy beside him with burning eyes. Don't you need to control this soul skill all the time? The light of the torch could only illuminate half of the boy's handsome face, and the other half of the cheek hidden in the obscurity looked sinister and evil. He shrugged and said, I just triggered a natural phenomenon. Not a soul skill. When the lightning in the dark clouds takes shape, I just need to lock on to the target to be struck. You are very strong. Long Hanyu's eyes were gradually filled with fighting spirit. If there is another chance, I want to fight you. Even though he has no relevant memories, the other party's belligerent character is still there. Even in the current dangerous situation, he still wants to keep getting stronger. Dayun smiled helplessly and said, then let's survive tonight first. Long Hanyu nodded, and looked outside the ruins with a very solemn expression again. Because at this time, a soft cold white light quietly revealed its face in the sky. The moon appeared. Dayun's, why does this setting of constantly dying and constantly getting stronger sound so familiar? Tang Liu, Tyrant Song, is it you? Tyrant Song. Song, die once a month on average and advance to higher realm? Shuheng, that's right, it's me, Song. Manual Doghead JPG. Chapter 585, Cut Off the Surging Black Tide. Under the sea of sands in the dark night, there was a terrible agitation. Even though he had expected it before, Dayun's breathing could not help but stagnate when he saw the dense black tide of monsters in front of him. There was only one question left in his mind. How did Long Hanyu and the others survive in the past few days? However, the other party's reaction in the next moment also answered his doubts for him. Long Hanyu's expression was also quite shocked, and he couldn't help but say, how could there be so many? So they didn't encounter such a scalp-numbing scene in the past few days. Dayun's heart sank. Could it be that because of his existence, the difficulty of the trial has increased? Although no one could tell him the exact answer, Dayun was quite sure that he was the reason for the dense black tide of monsters in front of him. The next moment, the black tide rushed towards the ruins where they were like an irresistible tsunami. Many disciples of the body sect had already revealed despair in their eyes. They had no idea how to survive this crisis. At the top of the ruins, Dayun looked at the surging black tide, snorted coldly, and raised his hand to point to the sky. When the lightning flashed unsteadily on his fingertips, thunder like rain poured down from the dark clouds in the sky, plowing the yellow sand around the ruins. All the monsters within a 5-meter radius of the ruins were annihilated on the spot, leaving no ashes. The disciples of the body sect, who thought they were going to die here, were stunned after seeing this scene. But then, the shock in their eyes was quickly replaced by something else. It was the fire of life that was about to bloom without reservation. Kill, someone shouted, and the disciples who could still fight rushed out of the ruins and found the monsters that were rushing in from 5 meters away. They were unarmed, and they released their soul power to wrap their whole bodies, using their bodies as weapons. They were disciples of the body sect, and the martial spirits they possessed were originally part of their bodies. Even though they could not release their martial spirits and use their soul skills now, their connection with them was not severed. In the battle between life and death, Almost all the disciples had bronze or silver light shining somewhere on their bodies. It was the second awakening of the original martial spirit. At the top of the ruins, Long Hanayu, who had seen all these scenes, clenched his fists and suppressed the burning feeling in his heart. He took a deep breath and looked at Dai-Yun's, who had put down his hand, and said, "Junior brother, thank you." Dai-Yun shook his head and said, "That was the result of their own choice. But like the one just now, I can't use it anymore, unless I go up and attract lightning again. But those monsters may not give me so much time." He looked up and looked at the dark clouds in the sky that had begun to dissipate. Long Hanayu's eyes were firm. "As long as we don't give up, we will definitely survive. If necessary, I can also." Dai-Yun's interrupted him, "Brother, things are not that bad yet. I still have a trick that may solve the current predicament. But I must maintain that trick with all my heart and soul, and those beasts can only be left to you." Although Long Hanayu didn't know what trick Dai-Yun's was talking about, at this time, he chose to trust Dai-Yun's unconditionally. "No problem, leave it to us." "Okay." Dai-Yun's nodded heavily, then took 2 steps forward, took a deep breath, and closed his eyes. He had already observed it carefully during the day. This relic is not big. If described as a circle, it is about 15 meters in diameter. And the space range he can control now is about 10 meters in diameter. "Let everyone gather on the first floor of the eastern part of the relic, near the large platform," he shouted to Long Hanayu behind him without looking back. Then the next second, his figure slowly floated away, but there was no movement of the wings of the Ice and Fire Dragon King behind him. The extremely bright silver light was released from the flying figure of the young man, until it spread out and covered all the areas within a radius of 10 meters. That was not the awakening of the silver level of the main body martial spirit. It was the power of space. Wherever the silver light passed, the space was strangely distorted. 10 meters away, the monsters that kept rushing in seemed to suddenly hit an invisible barrier and were abruptly cut off. Long Hanayu left at full speed as soon as Dai-Yun spoke, and gathered all the disciples of the main body sect in one place, watching the distorted silver light covering most of the ruins and isolating the monsters from the black tide. At this time, only a small number of monsters were still within the isolation range of 10 meters, rushing towards everyone. After seeing this scene, Long Hanayu didn't understand Dai-Yun's intention. His face was happy, and he immediately rushed out first and found the monsters that remained in it. With this isolated space, as long as the monsters left in it were cleaned up, they would have a safe area and time to breathe. After that, they had the initiative in their hands, and could attack or defend. The disciples who could still fight were stunned for only a moment, and then rushed out with Long Hanayu to deal with the remaining monsters one by one. 10 meters away, the monsters had already formed a high black wall, but no matter how they hid and bit, they could not cross the solidified space. Gradually, they became more and more crazy, and even began to kill each other, throwing the weaker monsters hard on the solidified space barrier. But this time, there were no more monsters in the isolated space. The relaxed disciples of the body sect sat down one by one, gasping for breath, looking at each other, and then laughed at the same time. That was the joy of surviving a disaster. In the air, Dai-Yun's, who closed his eyes tightly and tried his best to maintain the space barrier, felt a rapidly decreasing soul power in his body, and for the first time he felt a sense of crisis that his soul power might not be enough. Of course, this may also prove that he actually only entered the trial with his mental power. Otherwise the majestic dark demon evil god tiger energy in his body would not be consumed so drastically. But it is also possible that maintaining the space barrier that blocked the black tide of thousands of monsters is such a drastic thing. The space solidified because of his will, and maintaining that solidified state requires a constant supply of soul power. In addition, every time those monsters hit, he needs to consume soul power to calm the space fluctuations caused by the impact, so as not to cause the barrier to become unstable and shatter. In the rules of heaven and earth, space is originally unobstructed. Forcibly solidifying it is to do something that violates the rules, and naturally there will be a corresponding price to pay. Perhaps Dai-Yun's can hold on until dawn, but the majestic dark demon evil god tiger energy in his body will most likely be consumed by maintaining the space barrier. That means that his cultivation speed will be restricted by the extreme martial soul again, and it will be a double extreme restriction. The once unobstructed cultivation process will become a thing of the past, and he will no longer be able to use his innate abilities, such as teleportation without scruples as before. He will become like other soul masters, and will start to carefully consider the use of every bit of soul power in his body. Perhaps this is just an illusory inheritance trial, and perhaps it is not worth exhausting energy for those disciples who would not die anyway. But he looked down and saw that some seriously injured disciples had no more worries and their lives were cut off after they relaxed their spirits. He looked at the other disciples of the body sect, standing solemnly in mourning for the dead disciples. Everything is still uncertain, right? It is still uncertain whether the exhaustion of energy in this inheritance trial will be reflected in the real body. In this case, it is worth saving one person if you can. Of course it is worth it. There are about 2 chapters left in the copy, and the author is still working hard on typing. If the author types faster, today should be the 5th update. Doj, thank you to the friends who voted for the recommendation and monthly tickets. Thank you to the book friend Yiwen's Hengdao for the 1,500 book coins reward. Thank you for your support. See you tomorrow. Chapter 586 5 Seconds of Rescue. After leading the disciples to place the bodies of the sacrificed companions, Long Hanayu heard Daiyun's voice in his mind. Brother Long, the monsters outside are attacking too fiercely. I can't hold on forever. Long Hanayu's expression condensed, and his mind became tense again. He also replied in his mind, what do you need me to do? It's better to open it than to block it. I will open a small hole and let some monsters in every once in a while to weaken their attacks on the space barrier. Long Hanayu understood what he meant and nodded, leave it to me. He then took a deep breath, facing the disciples who were injured to varying degrees, and said in a deep voice, companions, although we have a place to stay temporarily, this safe area was opened up for us by Brother Dai with all his strength. Brother Dai can't maintain this space forever. The attacks of the monsters outside will not stop before dawn. Our battle is not over yet. I wonder if I, Long Hanayu, will be lucky enough to share life and death with you. The disciples who could still move stood up one by one with burning eyes. Brother Long, we will all follow your arrangements, live and die with Brother Long, live and die with all of you. Okay, Long Hanayu said in a low voice, and responded with a fiery and resolute look. Then everyone, listen to my command, we must survive tonight. He first looked at Zhang Yixi and Chen Yu, junior sister Zhang, junior brother Chen Yu, please take good care of the injured disciples and don't let the fish that slip through the net take advantage. Zhang Yixi and Chen Yu nodded in unison. Yes. Long Hanayu finally looked at the other disciples who could still fight. Others, follow me to meet the enemy. After saying that, he was the first to jump down from the platform on the east side of the ruins. And the rest of the disciples followed closely. Daiyun chose this platform as the main location of the space because it was backed by the temple, with an open front and an advantage in terrain that could be advanced or retreated. At this time, he was in the air, although he did not directly look down. But he also clearly saw the actions of Long Hanayu and other disciples. When they were about to approach the space barrier, Daiyun carefully manipulated the power of space and opened a gap as wide as a door on the barrier. Like a dam that was suddenly opened, the black tide formed by monsters rushed out from the gap and rushed in. Even though many of their kind were crushed alive, they had no intention of stopping. Long Hanayu, who was rushing in the front, took the lead and threw a punch, which actually triggered a jade fist light that almost turned into substance, and smashed the monsters that rushed out into pieces. Although the other disciples were not as fierce as him, and did not have his self-created soul skills, they cooperated with each other tacitly and cleared the monsters at a fast speed. In addition, the initial wave was just to see where the limit they could bear was. The gap in the barrier was only opened by Daiyun for a moment, and the total number of monsters that rushed in was actually not many, so they were quickly cleared by the disciples. Go on, junior brother Dai. Although the two had not communicated in advance, Long Hanayu still knew Daiyun's purpose. So after everyone easily dealt with the first wave of monsters, they spoke out. The gap in the space barrier was opened again, and the monsters rushed out anxiously, wanting to tear the humans they saw into pieces as soon as possible. Long Hanayu looked cold, but he still rushed forward first, and took most of the pressure with several other disciples with higher cultivation, leaving only a small part of the monsters to other disciples. After killing 10 waves of monsters in succession, some disciples began to show signs of fatigue. After the 15th wave, some disciples began to be injured, but at the same time, some disciples awakened their martial spirits for the second time in the crisis, and some disciples successfully combined soul power with mental power and realized their own self-created soul skills. After the 30th wave, Some disciples fell down due to exhaustion. Long Hanyu stopped all the monsters that rushed in while screaming for others to save people. At the 50th wave, Yu, who was already covered in blood, suddenly laughed and led away most of the monster black tide alone. Brothers, I'll go first. After he led the monster black tide far enough away from the others, a vigorous bronze glow suddenly burst out from his body. The next second, all the monsters he led away disappeared in the light of the bronze explosion. At the same time, the space barrier that isolated the huge monster black tide from the outside world shook violently, bursting out a bright silver light that was difficult to look at directly. The space was instantly distorted and turned into the sharpest knife. All the monsters that entered it were killed with one blow. The disciples looked sad, but more of them were numb and determined. Long Hanyu, who was extremely cold, closed his eyes and said, "Go on, junior brother," but this time, no matter how long he waited, the space barrier had no intention of opening a gap again. After a long time, Long Hanyu looked at the seemingly endless monsters outside the barrier and sighed softly. Everyone rest on the spot and wait for the next attack. No one answered, but the disciples all sat cross-legged at the same time, racing against time to recover their soul power. Long Hanyu looked up at the completely still figure in the air. "Junior brother, don't be impulsive. In this situation, everyone has already prepared to die at any time. Don't be distracted by this. You are very important to us. If you were not here tonight, we might have been wiped out." But he waited for a long time, but there was no response. Long Hanyu sighed to himself, turned his head and looked at the black tide outside the barrier. His eyes were dark and unclear, and there seemed to be a trace of madness in the depths of his eyes. "Junior brother, if I die, the other companions will be left to you." He was interrupted by the sudden white light in the black tide outside the barrier before he finished speaking, and it came to an abrupt end. Indistinctly, it seemed that someone was shouting anxiously outside, "Help, save us!" The moment he saw the white light, Long Hanyu's expression suddenly changed, and his whole breath suddenly became dangerous, like a volcano on the verge of eruption. With a flash of silver light, Daiyun's figure appeared out of thin air beside him, also looking at the direction where the white light and the voice came from. 5 seconds, I can buy you 5 seconds at most, he said. 5 seconds was still too short. But Long Hanyu gritted his teeth and finally nodded vigorously. Okay. After saying that, he immediately closed his eyes and adjusted his breathing. The whole person's spirit was climbing to the highest peak at an unimaginable speed. Everyone retreat. After taking a deep breath, Daiyun shouted loudly, then strode forward, walked straight to 3 meters in front of the barrier and stood still, looking intently at the roaring monster black tide outside. Except for Long Hanyu, the other disciples quickly moved away after hearing Daiyun's shout. But they did not really go to the rear, but kept a distance that could support at any time, and then stood there motionless. At this time, Daiyun activated the power of space and opened the part of the barrier he was facing. The monsters immediately rushed in. But as soon as they stepped into the barrier, they were stopped by Daiyun using the power of space, and then their bodies were cut into pieces. Daiyun, who was facing the monster torrent alone, took a lunge and supported his hands in front of him, as if he was pushing something hard. When he gradually adapted and found the balance point to fight against the monster tide, he gritted his teeth and gradually put down his right hand. Only his left hand was left to manipulate the power of space to fight against the endless monster torrent, and cut it off before the barrier. Daiyun pointed his lowered right hand at Long Hanyu behind him. Senior brother Long, the simple action of making a sound completely emptied his remaining mind. Go! The boy's right hand swung forward suddenly, accompanied by his roar, and successfully teleported Long Hanyu outside the barrier, as close as possible to the place where the white light was emitted in the black tide at the maximum distance. After doing all this, Daiyun's figure resisting the monster torrent also became unstable for a moment. Several monsters took advantage of this gap to successfully avoid the strangulation of space and passed Daiyun towards the ruins behind him. But Daiyun was not alone at this time. The disciples of the body sect who were on standby at any time had already taken the initiative to step forward and deal with those who slipped through the net one by one. At the moment when Long Hanyu was teleported out, Daiyun began to stabilize the space to strangle the monster torrent again, and shouted, 5. At the same time, Long Hanyu outside the barrier also opened his eyes, and his figure fell towards the place where the white light was shining like a meteor. 4. The next second, Long Hanyu had already arrived in the white light and saw the girl who was surrounded by several people in the center, with her eyes closed and holding a white snow lotus in her hands. The white light that enveloped everyone and separated them from the monsters outside came from the white snow lotus in the girl's hand. 3. Time was running out, and Long Hanyu only had time to let everyone grab each other, and then with his absolute physical fitness, he led everyone to the space barrier. 2. A huge figure suddenly blocked them, and the mouth parts full of disgusting fangs bit towards the few people. That was the fleshworm that Taiyuns had killed before, but this one was obviously bigger than the one he had killed. Long Hanyu did not dodge, but burst out with an extremely strong light all over his body. That light was not only mixed with the color of silver, but also had a texture as warm as jade. In that light, Long Hanyu seemed to disappear. But he gave people the feeling that he was the world itself. The unity of heaven and man. There was no tragic confrontation. Long Hanyu himself was a blade of extremely sharp sword light, and he led the people behind him to directly pierce the big fleshworm that blocked the road. Flesh and blood flew behind them, but they had already reached Taiyuns' transmission range. At the same time, Taiyuns' last countdown sounded. 1. A silver light flashed, and Long Hanyu and everyone behind him were teleported into the barrier by Taiyuns. Taiyuns also moved at the same time. Although his steps were a bit difficult, he still walked forward firmly, gradually pushing the torrent of monsters back outside the barrier, until the strangling force from the space in front of him completely overlapped with a gap in the barrier. With a thud, the gap was closed again, and he put down his hands that had been raised in front of him, panting rapidly. Long Hanyu wanted to come forward to help him, but he was stopped by him. The boy bent over, one hand on his knee, looking at the monsters outside with a sinister and cruel look, but eventually turned into unwillingness and fear. Everyone retreat, I must narrow the range. When he opened the barrier and faced the black tide alone, the first picture in his mind, Taiyuns, you shall not pass. The second picture, Taiyuns, retreat. Retreat. Retreat, Doge. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 587, Dead End. Long Hanyu led his men to settle the disciples he had just rescued, and learned from them why they were able to come here safely. It was the snow lotus in the girl's hand. The light emitted by the snow lotus can temporarily block the monsters outside. It was the girl who burned her soul power and used the power of the snow lotus at the most dangerous moment that allowed them to hold on for a while in the black tide and wait for Long Hanyu's support. Long Hanyu listened to the disciples' praise of the girl somewhat carelessly, just staring at the girl's cheek. He didn't remember the girl's identity, but instinctively felt that she should be very important to him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have suddenly changed color when he saw the white light, and he wouldn't have successfully realized the unity of man and nature between life and death because he wanted to save her. If it was a second later, Long Hanyu turned his gaze to the boy in the air. The other party's figure was still as if still, and he was doing his best to maintain the space barrier to block the monster black tide outside. However, compared with before, the range that the space barrier could block has been reduced a lot, and it can only cover a distance of 5 meters in diameter, so the range of their activities has also been reduced. All this is because he forcibly bought himself 5 seconds. The boy was the only one among them who remembered everything. Perhaps it was because of this that he stood up immediately without hesitation when he wanted to save people. It seemed that he also knew that the girl was very important to him and didn't want to watch her die. Obviously, if the boy didn't take the initiative to show up at that time, for the sake of the overall situation, he would not let his companions inside die because of the people outside. He wanted to give up, but the boy gave him hope in time. Fortunately, and the other party was the only one among them who could use the martial spirit and had the ability to keep them alive. He couldn't imagine what would happen if Taiyuns had any accident in the 5-second rescue operation just now. No, it seems that Taiyuns is not the only one who can use the martial spirit now. Long Hanyu looked at the girl again, and the other party woke up from her coma at this time. I survived. This was the first thing the girl said after she woke up. Then she saw Long Hanyu squatting beside her. She was slightly stunned and said, "Who are you?" Long Hanyu looked at the other person, who looked unfamiliar but still had an expression of unreserved trust in him. A kind of satisfaction rose in his heart, and there was another feeling that he couldn't quite call out his name now. Long Hanyu. The young man's stern expression softened inexplicably. My name is Long Hanyu. With the help of Long Hanyu, the girl sat up and looked at him. Hello, my name is Vina. Did you save us? Long Hanyu shook his head and looked up at the sky. He saved all of us. Vina followed his gaze and indeed saw a figure there. She said, thank you. Long Hanyu turned around and looked at her. Junior sister, can I use my martial soul here? Vina nodded. I have twin martial souls. After coming here, I can still use my first martial soul, Snow Lotus, but I have lost contact with my second martial soul. By the way, my second martial soul is the brain. Long Hanyu pondered and digested the information in the girl's words. Could it be that this desert world only banned the main martial soul? If it happened that a genius with twin martial souls like Vina had another martial soul other than the main martial soul, it would not be affected? At this time, Vina also noticed the other injured disciples around her. Her expression became serious. She tried her best to stand up and said, you are too seriously injured. It just so happens that my Snow Lotus is a healing system and can help you. Hearing this, Long Hanyu was stunned for a moment, and then a happy look appeared on his face. Then I'll trouble you. This night was quite dangerous, but fortunately, with the healing spirit Master Vina, even if Long Hanyu led people to eliminate several waves of enemies later, there were no casualties like before. Even the previously injured disciples have shown signs of recovering and being able to rejoin the battle. Moreover, the sky gradually brightened. Everything seemed to be changing for the better. In the sky, Dayuns watched indifferently as the monsters screamed and wailed because of the appearance of the skylight, and hid under the yellow sand before the ray of sunlight appeared in the sky. Those who failed to hide in time quickly dried up, turned pale, and weathered under the sunlight, and finally broke into sand of unknown composition, blending into the endless desert and disappearing. These monsters that can only appear at night are very afraid of sunlight, and will even die when they see it. No wonder there is no trace of them during the day, and they start to revel like crazy at night. Only after confirming that there are no traces of monsters nearby did Dayuns retract the power of space and slowly landed on the wings of the Ice and Fire Dragon King. Without waiting for Long Hanyu and Vina to speak, Dayuns said, let everyone get ready. I will take you to find a way out. We will set off immediately. Long Hanyu was stunned. Vina, who was standing beside him, could not help but say, but you have been guarding us for a night. Don't you want to rest first? Dayuns shook his head. It is unlikely that we can hold on for another night like yesterday. The sooner we find a way out, the fewer people will be sacrificed, but we don't have any clues about the way out at all. Long Hanyu frowned and said, leave this to me. Dayuns opened the Eye of Destiny on his forehead, and at the same time he sat cross-legged, taking this opportunity to restore his soul power. You go and organize everyone now, and when I find the direction of the way out, we will set off immediately. After saying that, he closed his eyes, meditated to restore his soul power, and used the power of time to find a glimmer of hope. Long Hanyu and Vina looked at each other, nodded to each other, and then separated to gather the disciples of the body sect in various parts of the ruins. Not long after, Long Hanyu and Vina came back with the others. Just at this moment, Dayuns also opened his eyes, and the Eye of Destiny on his forehead closed. He looked at everyone and said as briefly as possible, there is an oasis in the southwest. If we move fast, we should be able to get there before dark. The exit is in that oasis. Vina's eyes lit up. Long Hanyu turned around and began to organize his disciples. Those who are in good condition should take the injured. Don't drag your feet, and don't leave anyone behind. I'll lead the way. Follow me closely. Dayuns stood up and ran towards the southwest first. However, before taking action, he did not forget to use the power of space to bring their remaining water and some other things. Leave the supplies to me too. The group marched towards the southwest in a mighty manner, almost without stopping halfway. But even so, they only saw the shadow of the oasis in the distance at dusk. Everyone, work harder. The way out is just ahead. After running continuously, everyone looked exhausted, and their chests were heaving violently. Even Long Hanyu could hardly speak clearly. But when they saw the oasis in the distance, they excitedly squeezed out the last bit of their strength, carrying their seriously injured companions on their backs, and continued to run forward. Finally, when half of the sun had sunk into the horizon, they arrived in front of the oasis. Some disciples stared blankly at the lush greenery, and they cried with joy. Even Daiyuns couldn't help but reveal a hint of relief. The familiar altar appeared in front of them. As long as they stepped into the formation on it, they could open a way out of the trial. But when a disciple approached there, he was suddenly knocked unconscious by an invisible barrier, and the expressions of Daiyuns and Long Hanyu changed at the same time. And just at this moment, the sun had completely set. Daiyuns immediately stepped forward and raised his hand to touch the invisible barrier, and transparent ripples arose where it touched. What's going on? Why can't I get through? Long Hanyu's expression was quite ugly. He also stepped forward and touched the barrier. Daiyuns clenched his right hand, concentrated all his soul power and punched the barrier in front of him. But in the end, it only caused a circle of more turbulent ripples on it, and had no effect on the barrier itself. Daiyuns was not angry when the attack failed, but became calmer. He raised his hand and pressed it on the barrier, and a bright silver light suddenly shone in the palm of his hand. The power of space began to invade, cutting and stretching it, until it completely penetrated into it. He tried to teleport people in through the small opening, but failed. The gap was not big enough. But it proved that his method was feasible. Seeing this scene, Long Hanyu understood what they were still missing, and immediately turned around and arranged for all the disciples to gather together. Put the injured people next to junior brother Dai, and the others should be alert and watch the surroundings. If there are monsters coming, deal with them immediately. Vina also came to Daiyun silently and began to treat the injured disciples with all her strength. However, these disciples generally lost some body parts in the fight against the monsters. Even if she could heal them, they would not be able to fight again. But no one from the body sect proposed to give up on them, even though they kept whispering, asking Vina to stop caring about them and concentrate on treating others. Vina responded with yes, yes, yes and good, good, good while mobilizing all her soul power to treat them. The disciples being treated were helpless and showed a very unwilling look on their faces. After the sun completely sank, the speed of darkness descending suddenly accelerated. Under the yellow sand outside the oasis, the familiar restlessness came again. How long will it take? Long Hanyu asked. Looking at Daiyuns who was trying hard to fight against a barrier. The crack on the barrier was already the size of a fist, but it suddenly became extremely difficult to expand it further. Not sure, Daiyuns gritted his teeth. This barrier seems to be set up to prevent us from leaving. It's very strong. Long Hanyu was silent for a moment, and suddenly looked at Vina who was treating the disciple, and then said, I will try my best to buy you time. After that, he walked to the front, as if to protect everyone behind him. Daiyuns increased the output of spatial power and tore open the cracks in the barrier. And those monsters that slowly emerged from the sand sea, like sharks that smelled blood, rushed towards them like crazy. Chapter 588 Burning, Sea of Spirit. The speed of the monsters running was fast and slow. Not many of them came to the crowd first, and they were easily dealt with by Long Hanyu alone. After realizing the state of unity between man and nature, he could combine soul power and mental power with a single blow, and could easily exert a power no less than soul skills. It was not until the large army of monsters began to pour in that he could no longer take care of every direction. Some of them would slip through the net and be dealt with by the disciples in the back. Among the disciples in the back, Gu Tong, Chen Yu, Zhang Yixi, and Wang Yanfeng led other disciples with weaker cultivation to deal with enemies from all sides. They were well organized and had a tacit understanding with each other. They would never let any monster have the opportunity to cross them and attack the wounded, Vina who was treating them, and Daiyuns who was trying his best to tear open the barrier. Although everyone knew in their hearts that this was just before the general attack. Once the moonlight appeared, it might be another black tide of monsters like last night. At that time, they would really have no power to fight back and could only wait to die. The only chance to survive is in the hands of the young man who is fighting the barrier with all his strength. As long as they can buy enough time. Even if they can't escape from this desert world in the end. But the other companions will definitely survive. Vina held her martial soul snow lotus in one hand, standing in front of the wounded and Daiyuns who had torn a foot-long crack in the barrier, with a vigilant and anxious look. If the front line of defense fails to solve all the attacking monsters in time, then she is equivalent to the last guarantee for those behind. Although she is only a healing spirit master, she has a certain combat power with her spirit power. Moreover, even if she has forgotten many things, her firm heart tells her with great certainty that she is definitely not a vase that can only be protected by others. Just like those companions who are fighting bloody battles, when necessary, she can also subconsciously look at the red-haired figure in the front who is fighting to the death with a monster, and the determination on her delicate face is even more. But what she couldn't see was that the injured disciples she was protecting behind her were looking at each other in the eye, communicating silently. Everyone made the same decision at the same time, and they all saw the same will in each other's eyes. Just when they were about to take action, a voice said calmly, "Don't think the result is so bad." They looked in the direction of the voice at the same time, and saw Dai Yun's who had torn a half-man-high crack in the barrier. While the boy was speaking, his aura suddenly climbed several steps, as if something had burned in his body, and his body was surrounded by gray-white light, like flames. "As long as we are not dead, it will not be your turn to sacrifice." The boy's calm tone seemed to have the power to shock people. As soon as the voice fell, the silver light belonging to the space that invaded, cut, and stretched the barrier suddenly became more dazzling, until the half-man-high crack was completely torn open, forming a channel that could communicate the space inside and outside the barrier. "I need someone to test whether the transmission can be successful. Who'll come?" The boy kept the crack from closing with one hand, and his eyes slowly swept over the wounded around him, his tone still calm. Everyone who was seen subconsciously turned their eyes away. Even though they knew that being teleported meant absolute safety, at this moment, none of them wanted to be the one teleported into the barrier. Dai Yun's curled his lips and randomly locked onto the disciple who was closest to him and the most seriously injured. He teleported him into the barrier and onto the altar without saying anything. "You are so hesitant. It's you, senior brother." As he spoke, he looked at the shocked face of the senior brother on the altar. He looked at him unwillingly, wanting to say something, but was eventually sucked into the light gate that appeared and disappeared. Dai Yun's looked at the others again. A stubborn senior brother said, "Junior brother, you have no right to decide whether we stay or go." With a flash of silver light, he also appeared on the altar and was sucked away by the light gate. "Go out and talk to me about this." Seeing this, another senior brother said aggrievedly, "We must live and die together with our companions." Someone followed and echoed, "Live together." Before they could finish their echoes, they were teleported to the altar by Dai Yun's at the same time, and then sucked away by the light gate. From the beginning to the end, Dai Yun's could teleport more than one person at the same time, but the crack was not big enough, so after confirming whether he could teleport successfully, he began to try the upper limit of the teleportation. Now he has tried it out, and there is only one senior brother left by his side. The senior brother was holding it in for a long time, and just when he opened his mouth to say something, his expression suddenly became anxious, staring at Dai Yun's back. Dai Yun's also keenly sensed the danger, but his first reaction was not to defend himself, but to teleport people to the altar and do his best to maintain the cracks in the barrier. Several dark tentacles stretched out from the ground under Dai Yun's feet, piercing all the fatal parts of his body. But just when he was about to be hit in a defenseless posture, a palm shining with a jade-like luster appeared and blocked all the dark tentacles for him. "I've been waiting for you for a long time." Long Hanayu's face was cold, and his other palm was like a knife, which easily cut off those tentacles. A huge flesh worm howled out from under the ground, with several broken, bloody tentacles in its mouth. Obviously, it was the culprit who attacked Dai Yun's, and no one knew when it sneaked over and attacked Dai Yun's at a critical moment. Perhaps, the monster encountered tonight may have already developed intelligence. This big flesh worm is only the first one that has appeared so far. No one knows how many more are hiding in the dark. But at least for now, the big flesh worm cannot pose a threat to Long Hanayu, who has reached the state of unity between man and nature. The hidden danger was temporarily eliminated, and Dai Yun's immediately shouted to others, "Come closer to me." At the same moment he said this, as if deliberately targeting him, the moonlight fell quietly. The familiar black wave attacked everyone again, and any glance at it was a scene that made people despair. The disciples who were already weak were surrounded by the suddenly increasing number of monsters, and were submerged in the black tide in an instant, and completely disappeared. Some disciples were able to resist for a while, but in the next second they resolutely detonated their soul power, dragging the monsters around them to death. After seeing this scene, Long Hanayu, who had killed the flesh worm, suddenly looked back at Vina, who was holding up the Snow Lotus Light Realm with all her strength, and a smile appeared on his cold face. At that moment, his figure seemed to be completely integrated into the world. Within a radius of 100 meters, all the monsters turned into dust and drifted away at the same time. and Long Hanayu himself also turned into flying ash and disappeared between heaven and earth. Just as he said before, he bought time for Daiyuns to teleport the weaker disciples to the altar. Not much, only 3 seconds. But when Long Hanayu's figure turned into dust and dissipated, Vina, who was holding the snow lotus in her hand, had a tear in her eyes. Silver was wrapped around her head, emitting a distorted, unreal light. "Junior brother Dai," she said softly, "I leave it to you." The not-so-strong mental fluctuations quickly spread outward with her body as the center, until all the monsters within a range of 50 meters suddenly died and fell to the ground. She also died, merged into the snow lotus in her palm, and exploded into a white light all over the sky. This time, she bought 2 seconds for Daiyuns. A total of 5 seconds. Now only Gutong, Chen Yu, Zhang Yixi, and Wang Yanfeng are left in the desert world. The black tide will not stop, even if the cut-off areas caused by the sacrifices of Long Hanayu and Vina were made up in an instant. And his teleportation range is still some distance away from Gutong and others. "Junior brother Dai, you go first, don't worry about us," he heard Zhang Yixi's voice. Obviously, the other party has always looked like he doesn't like to talk, but now he would consider him first. "Junior brother, you are the only one who remembers all of us, and the only one who has the ability to escape," he heard Chen Yu's voice again. "As long as you are still alive, it is equivalent to us not dying yet," Wang Yanfeng roared, his fists shining bronze, and there was a tendency to spread all over his body. And once the bronze brilliance covered his whole body, it was the time for the explosion to come. Gutong was the only one who didn't speak. This shy young man didn't talk much like Zhang Yixi, but he was just not good at speaking. His eyes were full of silver light, and wherever he looked, there were large groups of monsters dying. But even so, he couldn't take care of all directions at the same time. It was only a matter of time before he died in the black tide. And now he has completely given up defense, risking injury, to prevent those monsters from getting close to Daiyuns. His determination has long been revealed in his actions. The boy opened the crack with one hand, and an unextinguishable flame suddenly ignited in his eyes. His other hand swung out violently, and the power of space spread rapidly, not only cutting all the monsters in the range into 2 halves, but also the familiar space barrier reappeared, blocking the black tide outside. "What are you talking about?" The terrifying breath suppressed the boy, who lowered his head. When he raised his head again, a strange vertical eye had opened on his forehead without knowing when. But the rose-gold color of the past has quietly disappeared by 1/3, turning into a mysterious transparent color. "Shut up, Gutong, Chen Yu, Zhang Yixi, and Wang Yanfeng, who were bound by the 4-sided space, watched the boy's figure gradually climb up, watched his eyes gradually fill with gold, watched his figure disappear between heaven and earth, and watched the huge strange vertical eye left in the sky. Live well, the boy's last voice resounded through the sky. The 4 people bound by the 4-sided space turned into silver light, passed through the barrier that had been completely broken at some point, and entered the light gate on the altar. At the same time, the huge strange vertical eye in the sky cast a cold glance at this desert world. It was like glass shattering. In the strange sound, the world was like a flat picture in a mirror, and it dissipated into slag together with a broken mirror. Only the endless darkness after the space was broken was left. There is still one more chapter in the final trial copy. Doge today, the author is working on this last chapter, and he plans to post it together, so it's late. Thank you to all the friends who voted for the monthly ticket. Thank you to the book friend 202261114111375 for the 100-point reward. Thank you for your support. See you tomorrow. Chapter 589, Seed of Inheritance. Headache, very painful. Just like the groggy feeling when having a fever, just shaking your head will make you feel as if your brain is about to explode. But his consciousness has not fallen into complete darkness, he still has feelings. So the next moment, he slowly opened his eyes and sat up from lying flat. There was not much spirit in his eyes, and he was a little confused looking at the surrounding lake scenery, as if he didn't understand why he could lie on the lake. Then he looked down and saw the small boat he was staying in, and then he suddenly realized it. The wooden boat was swaying slowly, with no one paddling, only relying on the lake water to push the waves, and moving unswervingly towards the center of the lake. Looking around, there was a pavilion in the middle of the lake. When he saw the pavilion in the middle of the lake, his still confused brain gradually became clear. Could it be Banwu Pavilion? His thoughts were pulled out of other memories deep in his mind because of a known, until everything that had happened before flashed before his eyes like a revolving lantern. Dai-Yun's pressed his temple with one hand, frowning, digesting all the memories that came out. When he looked at the pavilion in the middle of the lake again, his figure disappeared in the silver light and came directly to the pavilion in the middle of the lake. There was a man sitting in the pavilion. In front of him was a fist-sized seed that looked like a garlic, which kept emitting white light. It seemed that the man had been sitting here waiting for a long time. Dai-Yun sat down opposite the man without any courtesy. "Senior," the man looked at him with amusement. "Are you still calling me senior now?" Dai-Yun's thought about it and realized that he should change his words, so he said again, "Sect Master." The man was Douluo, but he looked younger than the one outside. At least his head was not bald. Douluo looked at him helplessly, then looked at the seeds floating in the air in front of him, and said, "Burning the sea of spirit is very dangerous. Even I can't extinguish the flames of the sea of spirit. Aren't you afraid of dying here?" This sentence brought back Dai-Yun's previous memories. At that last moment, the situation was critical. If he didn't instantly and significantly improve his abilities, Gu Tong, Zhang Yixi, Chen Yu, and Wang Yanfang would die in the surging black tide. His soul power had almost been burned out earlier in order to open a crack in the barrier. In this way, only his sea of spirit was left. After a moment of emptiness, his eyes became clear again. The young man glanced at Douluo, then looked further into the lake. "At the beginning, I was kept in the dark. Even though I might be killed by the will of the universe at any time, I still set foot on the venue of the All-Continent Advanced Soul Master Academy Soul Fighting Competition. I was not afraid of the life threat at that time, so how could I be afraid of death in a trial secret realm?" Moreover, he smiled and looked at Douluo opposite him. "Am I not sitting here well now?" Douluo did not speak. After a long time, he looked at the seed in front of him and said, "I have never underestimated your talent, really. But I didn't expect that I still underestimated you. Although the stimulation between life and death is most likely to make the body's martial soul awaken a second time, I didn't expect that you could awaken twice in just a few months." Dai-Yun remembered the feeling of all the power in his body boiling at the same time when he used that move for the last time. "Is it a gold level second awakening?" Douluo nodded. "You are the first person since the founding of the body sect to awaken to the gold level shortly after awakening to the silver level. My brother Douluo and I, as well as the previous leaders of the body sect, have never witnessed this, but now it may be possible." After Douluo finished speaking, Dai-Yun saw the white seed floating towards him, looking a little impatient. "Is this the seed of inheritance?" Dai-Yun didn't pay attention to the seed anymore. As Douluo spoke, he saw from the corner of his eye that the white seed floating in the air seemed to have wilted a lot, as if it knew it was rejected. Douluo nodded. "The secret realm of the inheritance trial was created because of it, and the talent you showed was recognized by it. You knew that those disciples would not die, but you still tried your best to save them, and this behavior also made it recognize you. Generally speaking, it is willing to recognize you as the master. Originally, I felt that I would not be able to wait for someone who could be recognized in this lifetime, so I planned to pass it to Long Hanyu and let him continue to wait on my behalf. Until I knew about you and Hou Hao, until I waited for you, until now, I will have the honor to witness the scene that my brother has been thinking about until his death." Dai-Yun frowned. "I don't want to be the leader of the body sect. I don't have this intention, and I can't bear this responsibility. Besides, I have other things to do." But when you risked your life to save those disciples, you had already taken on this responsibility. Otherwise, you could just stand by and watch. After all, they were just undergoing trials and would not really die. In this case, you still stood up. What was it for? Dai-Yun was silent for a long time. "I just want to have a clear conscience." "The seed of inheritance recognizes your clear conscience," Douluo said slowly. The young man did not reply immediately, and finally said, "I still don't have the idea of becoming a sect leader. Although I have joined the body sect now, you know that my goal is only to awaken my martial soul for the second time." Douluo did not care about the change in his address, and changed the subject, saying, "Do you think that you entered the trial secret realm with your body, or only your spirit?" Dai-Yun did not respond, waiting for his next words. The seed of inheritance and the trial of inheritance were both set up by the founder of our Benti sect. They can turn all the experiences of disciples in the trial into insights for cultivation, and the self-created soul skills comprehended in it can also be brought back to reality at the same time. It's extremely mysterious. If it were just a simple illusion, it would naturally not have such a magical effect. In fact, every trial that disciples experience in it is a small world with its own rules opened up by our ancestors with the power of the seed of inheritance. Douluo looked at the young man's face with satisfaction as he was gradually filled with surprise, and continued, "You burned all your soul power and the sea of spirit in it, and the last blow directly shattered a small world. But when you feel your state now, have those powers decreased at all compared to before entering the trial?" Dayun looked at the white seeds floating in front of him. The power contained in the seed of inheritance allows the disciples who are undergoing trials in the small world to turn their deaths into illusions. It is also its power that saved you, allowing you to survive intact after burning the sea of spirit and breaking the world. But even the seed of inheritance is not easy to do this, not to mention that it also restores all the energy in your body. Why don't you guess how it saved you? There was a deep meaning in Douluo's eyes. The young man was silent, but slowly raised his hand and pressed his chest. There was already a surge of energy there, secretly echoing with the white seed in front of him. In fact, it has already merged with you. And according to the ancestral precepts of the sect, whether you like it or not, you are the successor to the next master of the body sect. Dayun looked at the cunning that finally revealed in Douluo's eyes, paused, and said, "Even so, I may not be the master for too long, whether it is for his own consideration or for what Tang Liu is secretly preparing." Douluo smiled, somewhat mysteriously. "You are the only one who has been recognized by the inheritance seed in all these years. If so, how do you think I became the leader of the sect?" Dayun understood, and no longer resisted. He reached out and grabbed the white seed in front of him. The seed cheered silently, turned into a stream of light and merged into Dayun's body, merging with the power in his heart and becoming complete. At the same time, he also felt that there seemed to be a lot more memories in his mind, which were all the exquisite inheritance of the body sect. Douluo, the Benwu pavilion you are looking for is actually in the inheritance seed. Communicate with its power and let it take you in. Hearing this, Dayun closed his eyes and began to contact the inheritance seed that rested in his heart. The inheritance seed echoed him, felt the will of the master, and the power contained in it began to be released outward. There was no special feeling, and he couldn't even detect the change in space. But when he opened his eyes, the surroundings were no longer the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Chapter 590, Benwu Ting. Tang Liu did not meditate in front of the phantom surrounded by blue light today, but moved a chair over and sat opposite to look at the illusory blue-gold vines floating on the palm of his left hand. He already knew almost all the secrets of the Void Blue-Silver Emperor. It was originally the spirit of the Blue-Silver Emperor. Yin had never been able to recover to the 100,000-a-year level because he lacked this spirit. At that time, he chose to be killed by Tang San, and he also considered returning it to Yin. However, since the integration of the spirit ring of the bright moon fairy queen sent by that guy, the Void Blue-Silver Emperor seemed to have evolved. Even after the part of the spirit that belonged to Yin was returned, his martial spirit did not disappear, and he was given a very powerful attack spirit skill, Void Spirit Silence. It completely broke the system's assessment of the Void Blue-Silver Emperor's initial loss of control and attack ability. But it was precisely because the Void Blue-Silver Emperor did not disappear that he was able to wake up smoothly from death after giving up his backhand to Jinriksu and Suyu. Perhaps that guy had anticipated this when he gave him the power of the Moonlight Fairy. Of course, the system also contributed to this. At the last moment, it was the system that exhausted all its energy, awakened him, and gave him the ability to live for 10,000 years. Until now, the system is still in a state of complete freeze, and it is unknown when it can be restarted. But to be honest, if the system had not frozen and dormant, Tang Liu would not have been able to find its body, and would not have discovered this so-called assistant system, which seemed to be. Tang Liu glanced at the phantom surrounded by blue light on the opposite side, his eyes sank, and then he changed his hand to support his body, and the phantom blue-silver emperor floating above his left hand also dissipated. The dark and simple clear sky hammer appeared as his right hand was raised. The heavy black light emitted from the surface of the hammer seemed to be mixed with a little bit of colorful color, and that was the causal power from the trunk bone. Among the three martial spirits that Tang Liu had, the one he knew the least about was not even the most mysterious Haolan magic, but the clear sky hammer in front of him. Compared to the other two martial spirits, the clear sky hammer seemed too ordinary, but it had the weight of the entire Douluo star. Tang Liu couldn't understand this. He looked at the shadow wrapped in blue light again. The former Shura god seemed to have said that when he crossed over, someone seemed to beat them up, and threatened them not to come to trouble him. Could it be related to this incident? While thinking, the causal power on the clear sky hammer seemed to have moved. Tang Liu's eyes immediately lit up with blue light, and he looked in a certain direction following the guidance of cause and effect. After seeing it clearly, he couldn't help but shook his head and smiled. It's good to be young. At that time, the three-eyed golden lion seemed to have secretly hidden something on Dai Yun's without his knowledge. He took back the clear sky hammer, sat up straight, and wanted to stretch, but stopped abruptly because of the wound on his chest and abdomen. But Tang Liu didn't care. He put down his hands as if nothing had happened, got up from the chair, and paced back and forth. The third soul core, the third soul core. It's still early. Well, let's see Dai Yun's push the coffin first. Even if he pushes all 5 coffins away, it's still too early for Hou Hao to condense the third soul core, he muttered to himself. This is a rather rough cave passage. The passage was filled with blue-black mist, and many mysterious blue-black runes were engraved on the surrounding stones. The first second he entered here, Dai Yun felt that his consciousness was being impacted by some inexplicable force. He looked at a blue-black mist that was the only light source in the dark cave, and he understood. It was indeed a place related to Tang Liu. It seemed that he was not in the wrong place. After a pause, Dai Yun began to walk forward along the passage. As he got closer to the depths of the passage, the impact on his consciousness became stronger, and vaguely, it seemed to give him a strange sense of familiarity. It seemed that he had been here a long time ago, but he didn't remember it now. Could it be like this? Dai Yun was a little confused, and his pace also quickened a bit. Although the force that directly impacted his consciousness was a bit strange, it was not enough to affect him at the moment. When Dai Yun finished walking through the passage, the impact only made him feel a little light. However, the sense of déjà vu seemed to be stronger. He frowned and looked at the scene that suddenly became clear in front of him, the small pavilion hanging by chains in the cave, the thicker blue mist, and the more runes. This is the Benwu Pavilion. Dai Yun did not hesitate and immediately walked into the Benwu Pavilion. When he stepped onto the steps of the pavilion, the force that impacted his consciousness became stronger, and even made him dazed. But at this time, the impact seemed to open a shackle in his mind, and a somewhat unfamiliar memory emerged. Looking at the time of the memory, it seemed that he was fighting against Yizishu's rampage. In the lightless and silent realm, all his actions were based on instinct, and his consciousness had long been unconscious. Before, he thought that his consciousness was asleep, but now he realized that he had already come to this Benwu Pavilion at that time. Just as he stepped onto the Benwu Pavilion, he could not bear the impact on his consciousness and returned to his body. The power at that moment seemed to come from Elder Kingai's ability to go back in time. No wonder this memory disappeared later, and no wonder Elder Kingai could appear again at that time. But how did he get in here at that time? Dai Yun continued to think, and a girl's face appeared in his mind. Is it Suyu? Why? He shook his head vigorously, forcibly suppressed the trance of consciousness, and no longer thought about the doubts in his heart, and turned to look at the 2 coffins in the Benwu Pavilion. Now, the most important thing is to push the coffin and then help Elder Kingai recover. But it's called a coffin, but it's actually more like 2 rough wooden boxes, which don't look like coffins at all. On the wooden box, it can be said that the door, or the part of the coffin lid, seems to have opened a gap long ago, and the blue mist around it comes from that gap. It can be seen that the blue light leaking out of the gap is extremely strong, and after the light spreads out, it forms a thick fog around. There are 2 wooden boxes, one of which is engraved with Yi Guangai Aoji. Guangying Douluo on the side facing him. The other one is engraved with Mingying Shiji, and Ying Douluo. Dai Yun is not quite sure what these words mean, he just looks at the word Douluo and is a little absent-minded. Tang Liu told him that he was going to push the coffin, but did not tell him what was inside the coffin. Now it seems that there are 2 titled Douluo lying in it. I was a little entangled when writing this chapter, so I posted it a little late today. Doge, thank you to the friends who voted for the monthly ticket. See you tomorrow. Chapter 591 Pushing the Coffin. Doubts aside, the coffin lid still had to be opened. He took a deep breath, reached out and pressed the lid of one of the wooden boxes, and pushed hard. It didn't move. Dai Yun rolled up his sleeves in disbelief, gathered his soul power, and pushed again. It didn't move at all. Tisk, it's really confusing. Dai Yun grabbed the hair on the back of his head, then looked at another wooden box, walked over and pushed hard, but it still didn't move. Why? This wooden box obviously smelled inferior. He was now at least more than 1,000 pounds with all his strength, so why couldn't he even push the lid open? Or rather, he hesitated for a while, then used one hand and one hand at the same time. It moved. But Dai Yan's hand was retracted as if he had suddenly touched boiling water. It wasn't that the coffin lid really became hot, but at the moment when he pushed the coffin lid, there was an unimaginable impact force that almost broke his consciousness, so he instinctively let go of his hand. From this point of view, his method is right, that is, to ensure that the consciousness can stabilize under the impact force generated when pushing the coffin. How can we break these at the same time? Oh, this is a joke. How can we protect the consciousness from being dispersed? Dai Yan's thought for a while, and suddenly found that he seemed to have no means to effectively protect his consciousness, even if he was a spiritual attribute soul master. But even if his spiritual power was much stronger than that of soul masters of the same level, he could not keep his consciousness from being impacted by the inexplicable force when pushing the coffin. In this case, what should he do? Dai Yan's thought of the memory of Elder King Gaia's ability to go back in time. At that time, he had just awakened at the silver level not long ago, and his spiritual power level was far inferior to the current gold level awakening. Just stepping onto the Benwu pavilion, his consciousness was disintegrated by the impact, forcing Elder King Gaia to show up, go back in time to let his consciousness return to its place, and at the same time bear Yi Zishu's complete version of the light of death. This series of events seemed quite coincidental. His consciousness had just gone wrong, and it was also when Yi Zishu sent out the complete version of the light of death. Looking back at that memory now, Dai Yan felt like, sometimes when he was half asleep and half awake, he heard someone calling him in his head, and the voice was so real that it sounded like it was ringing in his ears. When he woke up suddenly, he found that it was the alarm clock ringing. The sound in the dream and the reality can be seamlessly connected, and the coincidence is as if someone has carefully arranged it. But this is not the point. The important thing is that if he can also master the ability to go back in time like Elder King Gaia, then when facing that kind of impact, can he always keep his consciousness in the best state? Thinking about it this way, perhaps it is not necessary to go back in time to push the coffin. He just needs to let the state of consciousness be still at a certain moment. It should be easier to just be still than to reverse time. But there is another question to be clarified first. If his consciousness is stilled at a certain moment, will his thoughts also be solidified? In that case, how can he control his body to push the coffin? Perhaps this requires learning to control it first. Just like Elder King Gaia had clearly gone back in time once, allowing his consciousness to return to his body, it stands to reason that he would not have this memory. He did not remember it before because these memories were sealed in his mind. They were broken out after being hit by the Benwu pavilion, allowing him to know everything again. So if he can also perform precise control, can he do this? It's worth a try. After deciding, the Eye of Destiny on his forehead opened. It used to be a rose gold vertical eye, but now 1/3 from top to bottom has turned into colorless and transparent appearance, but Dai Yan has not yet discovered the changes in the Eye of Destiny. After the Eye of Destiny opened, Dai Yan carefully manipulated the power of time to maintain his consciousness, and then pressed the two coffin boards with both hands again and pushed them open with force. The strong impact on consciousness came surging at the moment the coffin lid was pushed, but this time, under the protection of the power of time, Dai Yan's consciousness was as unmoved as a rock in a torrent. There was a hint of joy on his face, and the strength of his hands increased a bit. As the coffin lid was pushed out a lot, a dazzling blue light suddenly bloomed in the gap. The blue light was strong, and the impact on consciousness was also suddenly increased. The consciousness that was frozen by time was also weathered in the irresistible torrent. Although Dai Yan immediately made adjustments to increase the power of time to protect consciousness, the breakthrough at that moment still made his consciousness fall into trance. At that moment, he felt as if he had gone to another time node. It seemed that the current pushing the coffin and the impact on consciousness were all like illusions and extremely unreal. He looked at the girl in the light, and was extremely confused in the endless bright space without shadows. Then in the next second, as if he heard something calling, he looked back suddenly. The world changed instantly, and the space full of light disappeared. Here, the sky shone with boundless divine light until the sight was filled with blood red full of killing breath. There were shouts from the ground again. Some people were roaring, some were shouting, some were looking up to the sky and howling, and some were crying blood. And right between the sky and the earth, right in front of his sight, A young man in blue was pierced by a golden trident from behind, and a few strands of golden hair fluttered in front of the blue-haired young man. The golden hair was shining, and the tip of the trident that pierced through the young man's back was dripping with blood. She killed him. Dai Yun seemed to hear someone exclaiming and someone was in disbelief. But the next moment, the light and shadow changed again, and he found that he was no longer in the sky. There were many people on the ground, but he couldn't see their faces clearly. But they all looked up and looked at the blue meteor falling from the sky. Dai Yun's pupils shrank suddenly. She will kill him, we must stop her, he heard the hysterical voice again. Did she really kill him? Just as the blue figure was about to be pierced by the falling golden trident, the graceful figure of the blonde in white quietly blocked the young man. It turned out that it wasn't her. The figure of the blonde in white disappeared transparently in the blue light. He found himself in the sky again. Watching the girl floating there, firmly and resolutely spreading her arms, letting the golden trident pass through her body. Her black hair had turned into a clear golden color from the roots when her martial spirit possessed her body. Although she used her body as a shield, she still couldn't stop the golden trident from piercing the blue-clothed youth behind her. A few strands of golden hair fluttered and swayed in front of the blue-clothed youth. This scene overlapped with the first scene. So, that person is me. The sky and the earth disappeared, and the young man pierced by the golden trident also disappeared. He returned to the endless bright space. A voice sounded at this time. You chose to block the attack of the god slanderer that wiped out his consciousness for him, and you suffered most of the damage from that attack. You are likely to die. The girl in front of him had empty eyes and a dazed look. Do you regret it? The voice that seemed to resonate with the heaven and earth sounded again. He saw a dazzling light bursting out of the girl's expression, called determination. No regrets. The girl's voice sounded in my ears again. So that's it. Suyu's plot is filled in Connect Chapter 336 No Regrets, Soul Core, Formation, and Chapter 364 Battle, Continuation. Fill in the specific experience of Suyu awakening the no regrets heart in the yin-yang soul refining abyss, and the detailed scenes she saw. After more than 200 chapters of filing in the plot, I'm really good at hiding it, haha, confusion. Chapter 592 Return to the team. The dream and illusion shattered and disappeared with this whisper. The memory that was truly sealed was finally awakened. The young man who stepped onto Benwu Pavilion looked at the girl beside him who was covered in golden light and said, Is this the purpose of you pulling my consciousness over to push the coffin in advance? Suyu, who was covered in golden light and seemed to have turned into the element of light itself, nodded slightly and said, Back in the yin-yang soul refining abyss, because I saw the captain being killed, I made a deal with a certain existence. I will bear the attack that will kill the captain, and the price is to lose all memories related to it. Dai Yun's was silent for a while and asked her, Is it worth it? Suyu smiled, her eyes full of clarity as if she remembered everything. The captain saved my life, so if I save him in return, isn't it just repaying his life-saving grace? She looked at the wooden box in Benwu Pavilion engraved with Yiguangai light and shadow Douluo, and a complex but beautiful light appeared in her eyes. It's really dark in the dungeon. Fortunately the light brought by the captain is bright enough. With a flash of light, King Guy with red eyes also appeared in front of Benwu Pavilion, raised his hand and put his hand on Dai Yun's shoulder. Suyu also noticed him, and the two nodded to each other. Thank you for helping me recall these. You just saw the rest of the story. I won't tell you any more after I come out. She smiled and thanked the young man next to King Gaia. Then her figure dissipated and merged into the wooden box. After that, time reversed, and King Gaia, with Dai Yun's figure, disappeared in front of the Benwu Pavilion filled with blue mist. The trance of consciousness also ended here. There was no illusion, his hands were still on the lids of the two wooden boxes, and the consciousness protected by the power of time was still under the impact. Recalling everything, he didn't show any other expression at this time, but looked at the blue light released from the two wooden boxes with a more solemn look. Previously, because the defense line of protecting consciousness was broken, he recalled all the sealed memories, and then he really understood what the power that impacted consciousness was. In fact, he was not unfamiliar with that power, because it was also the power of time. It's just that the power of time contained in the two wooden boxes is too terrifying, so it has such a strong impact on consciousness. Even though he has stilled his consciousness, his defense line is still broken. That's more than 20,000 years. Human consciousness is only 100 years old, so it is naturally vulnerable in 10,000 years, and it will die with a little impact. This is why static time can also be torn apart by the impact. It's because the power of time he controls is too weak. If you want to resist the erosion of 20,000 years of time, you have to make the power of time you control stronger. And as the coffin is pushed, he also finds that the power of time he controls is increasing, as if the 20,000 years of time has turned into his own power. No wonder Tang Liu wants him to push the coffin, and said that only after pushing the coffin can he help Elder King Gaia. Come on. The boy's body is lit up with gray-white light, and with a low shout, the speed of pushing the coffin lid suddenly increases. The blue light released from the 2 wooden boxes is getting stronger and stronger, and it seems to echo the blue runes around. In an instant, Ben Wu-Ting seemed to have turned into the night sky, and those blue runes that were shining with light became bright stars one after another. The 2 wooden boxes were already mostly opened, and the power of time to impact consciousness became stronger, even directly acting on Dai Yun's body. The young man standing in front of the wooden box seemed to be growing and aging rapidly, but it returned to its original state in an instant. He was using his power of time to fight against the 20,000 years of time. When the confrontation of time reached a certain moment, he suddenly shouted, and his hands burst out the last strength of his body, completely opening the wooden box that had been open for most of the time. He actually opened the coffin lid directly. Greek letter sigma, degree. The blue light became extremely dazzling, lighting up the entire cave where Ben Wu-Ting was located, and even Dai Yun's figure disappeared in the sudden burst of blue light, and he couldn't help but raise his hand to cover his eyes. Fortunately, the blue light came quickly and disappeared quickly. But when the blue light disappeared, the blue runes around it, and even the fog surrounding the Ben Wu pavilion, also disappeared. Now, there are only 2 rough wooden boxes that have been opened in the Ben Wu pavilion. The wooden boxes are pitch black, and it seems that there is nothing. Dai Yun's glanced at the 2 lids that fell beside him, and felt a little guilty for some reason. However, he still walked forward to see if Su Yu and Su Chen were lying in the 2 wooden boxes respectively, and whether they had woken up. But when he approached and cast his eyes into the 2 wooden boxes, he did not see the picture he imagined, where someone was lying peacefully in them. It was not empty. Instead, it was 2 complete worlds with mountains, rivers, oceans, glaciers, and everything. The moment the world came into his eyes, Dai Yun's mind was shaken. Even though he had experienced the baptism of 20,000 years, he could not calm his mind in the shock of seeing those 2 worlds. He only felt that his eyes went black, and when he regained his vision, he had already arrived at the martial arts field of the Benti sect, looking at the brothers and sisters who had just woken up around him, with a confused face. What happened? Ben Wu Pavilion. Shortly after Dai Yun's disappeared, the 2 wooden boxes that seemed to be empty but actually contained a world each also moved. One bright and one dark, 2 shadows flew out of them and slowly turned into human forms in Ben Wu Pavilion. Finally out the light and shadow turned into a girl. It was Su Yu. She stretched lazily, and her tone was like she had taken a very long nap. Su Chen next to her still didn't have any extra expression, and the range of his body movement was not large. Next, the captain should come to pick us up, Su Yu said, relaxing her shoulders and looking at Su Chen next to her. As soon as she finished this sentence, 2 misty blue lights suddenly lit up in front of the 2 of them, cutting through the space and turning into a door. Inside the door was the meeting room with a somewhat dim light. But then, the meeting room suddenly lit up with a light of fluorescent lights, and it was suddenly snow white. Welcome back. The voice of the young man came from inside the door. Su Yu walked into the door first, followed by Su Chen. When the 2 entered the conference room, the door formed by the blue light disappeared, and only the ordinary wooden door of the conference room remained behind them. There were already many people sitting in the conference room. Except for the 4 empty seats and their seats, all other seats were occupied. However, except for Tang Liu who was sitting at the first seat, and Jin Chen and Funi who were close to the conference room, everyone else was just an illusory projection. Just like the state they had when they met Dai Yun's before. Everyone smiled and watched them sit back in their seats. Welcome back to the team. After the 2 sat down, Tang Liu who was sitting at the first seat said with a smile. Finally I see you in person, Captain. Su Yu smiled. I haven't seen you for a long time. Not bad, right? Su Chen also nodded gently to Tang Liu. Tang Liu looked at them and the people in other seats. Everyone looked at him. He lowered his eyes and smiled softly. Very good, everyone is doing well, so it's not bad. The first half is the final explanation of Su Yu's story in chapter 564 and Ye's issue in chapter 565. I wonder if you guys still remember it. Doj. After writing this, I excitedly ran to check the outline of the Doujinshi I Part 1 wrote recently, and found that I had just reached the first fifth of a full page, and the author said, "Damn. Why haven't I written the ending of Doujinshi I yet? Why hasn't the fight started yet? Bite the handkerchief JPG." But the author estimated that the size of Doujinshi I should be similar to that of Doujinshi I, so it will be soon, right? Lack of confidence JPG. Next, I will go to the Holy Spirit Church to become an evil soul master, thanks to the friends who voted for the monthly ticket. See you tomorrow. Chapter 593 Leaving the Body Sect. Daiyuns became famous in the body sect. However, this way of becoming famous made him feel a little bit painful. The reason was that he saved most of the disciples of the body sect by himself during the trial, showing considerable combat effectiveness. After the trial, they all recovered their memories in the secret realm. Naturally, now one by one, militants came to the door. At first, they just knocked on the door of Daiyuns' dormitory and asked him to go to the martial arts arena to compete. But Daiyuns refused with a painful face, saying, "I'm busy, I can't get away, and I don't have time." In fact, he didn't lie. He was busy helping Elder King Gaia transform the power of the resentful spirit of the light of death recently, and he really didn't have time to compete with him. But since he agreed to compete with Long Hanyu, things started to get out of control. Daiyun swore that he really only planned to fight with Long Hanyu. At first the difference in cultivation was still difficult to make up, so it was not unfair for Daiyuns to lose. But what he didn't expect was that Du Buxi was also secretly peeking at the screen, and took advantage of the fact that the titled Douluo elder had not yet left a martial arts arena, and went up to press him there. Daiyun stood by and watched happily, and said to Du Buxi, "Can I learn this grappling technique? I just suffered an injustice." Du Buxi, the elder who was pressed to the ground by Du Buxi. In short, 7 days after the trial, Daiyuns helped Elder King Gaia transform the power of the resentful spirit while competing with many disciples of the body sect, and also gained a lot in each battle. Especially when fighting with Long Hanyu, who had reached the state of unity between man and nature, the improvement of both mental power and soul power was very obvious. This point, even the battle with the soul saint disciple of the body sect could not give. It was another night. Daiyuns was meditating and cultivating his soul power. His consciousness also entered his Danshin space through the contract, and he continued to use the power of time to help King Gaia transform the power of the resentful spirits. But in fact, even if Daiyuns' control over time has reached a new level, he can't help much in the face of the resentful spirit power in King Gaia's body that directly affects the evil attributes. This situation is similar to the situation where Mazaya Ateo's martial soul mutated under the influence of the dark power of the Sword of Judgment. Although because of Daiyuns, the event of Mazaya Ateo's mutation did not happen at all. If the power of the resentful spirits is allowed to invade the body, King Gaia may go crazy and die in the end. And because King Gaia himself has defects, it is difficult for him to completely transform the power of the resentful spirits by himself, so he needs the help of Daiyuns, the contract object. But Daiyuns' help is just to lend his now strengthened power of time to King Gaia. After these few days of transformation, the blood red in King Gaia's eyes has long disappeared, and his aura is no longer as crazy as that day. After tonight, I believe he will be able to recover completely. Daiyuns' Danshin space was pitch black, somewhat similar to the lightless silence realm. But compared to Tang Liu's blue world, it was particularly monotonous. I don't know how Tang Liu did it. I have to ask him if I can learn it. And the complete world he glimpsed in the 2 wooden boxes in Ben Wuding. While thinking about these, Daiyuns also exited the Danshin space and his consciousness returned to his body. As the sky gradually brightened, he practiced a purple extreme demon eye as usual, and then went to the Bengtsin Hall, where he found Du Buxi, who seemed to have been waiting for him for a long time. Du Buxi drank tea. "Are you here?" Daiyun saluted him, then took out a pile of books from the storage soul guide. "Thank you for taking me in, Sect Master. These are what I copied down these days. They are all the secrets hidden in the seed of inheritance. Because the seed of inheritance is integrated with me, I cannot take it out and return it for the time being, so I have to do this first to repay the Sect Master's kindness these days." Du Buxi didn't look at the pile of books in front of him, but kept looking at Daiyuns and asked, "Are you done?" Daiyuns nodded. "It's time to set off for the next place, The old man slowly put down the teacup in his hand, paused for a long time, and said, "Take care, I won't keep you any longer. But in the future, if you think this place is not bad, come back and have a look." Dai Yun's cupped his hands and said, "If I can take out the seed of inheritance later, I will return it immediately. Sect Master, see you later." After that, the young man turned around and walked towards the door of the Tang San hall. "I have been in the body sect for a long time. I don't know what the situation is like for Senior Sister Mazaya Ateo in the Holy Spirit Church. I have to go and meet her as soon as possible." He was worried in his heart. As soon as he stepped out of the Tang San hall, he saw a group of body sect disciples gathered outside, all looking at him. Dai Yun's Long Hanayu, who was standing in the front row, spoke first. "Junior brother, how about we continue yesterday's competition?" Dai Yun's glanced at him, then looked at everyone around him, and could still see many faces he had met in the Trial Secret Realm. In other words, those were the people he had saved in the Trial Secret Realm. He smiled and said to Long Hanayu, No, I have things to do." Another day, he walked in another direction while speaking. Long Hanayu led the disciples around him and stepped forward to cut off all of Dai Yun's escape routes. "It's better to do it today than to wait for a day. Yesterday's battle was really exciting, and I'm still not satisfied. So what do you think, Junior brother Dai?" Dai Yun said cheerfully, some other day, I really have something to do today." The disciples of the body sect had completely surrounded Dai Yun's, and many of them had even released their martial spirits. Long Hanayu's state of unity between man and nature had become increasingly profound. He raised his hand, and his skin naturally deformed until his entire right hand turned into an axe. "Junior brother, I know you had a great time fighting yesterday." Long Hanayu stared at Dai Yun's, then suddenly chopped him down. At this moment, Dai Yun's long-awaited Ice and Fire Dragon King wings spread out, carrying his figure rapidly to the sky. His laughter could be heard in the air. "It really won't work today, maybe next time, senior brother." The tail of this sentence was still echoing in the martial arts arena of the body sect, but Dai Yun's figure was about to disappear in the sky. The disciples surrounding Dai Yun's, those who had reached the soul saint level and those whose martial souls were like a pair of wings like Chen Yu, who could fly, all flew high at this time, wanting to chase Dai Yun's. "Brothers and sisters, see you later." The voice of the young man was heard from afar. "That's enough." Dubusi's voice came from the Tang San hall. At the same time, there was a powerful soul force that pressed all the disciples who were flying in the air and wanted to chase Dai Yun's back to the ground. "I really can't bear to leave him, so just practice well and go to the next soul fighting competition to find him. It just so happens that our Benti sect has been silent for too long. It's time to go out and take a look." Long Hanai looked at the old man who walked out of the hall with his hands behind his back. After a moment of silence, he said, "Sect Master, we haven't even had time to thank Junior Brother Dai." Dubusi glanced at him, smiled and didn't say anything, just looked at the horizon, the direction where Dai Yun's disappeared. The young man told him that he would return the inheritance seed in the future. But is it the inheritance seed that he cares about? From the beginning to the end, his goal was to lure people into the Benti sect. "Since you are all here, move the books inside to the Benai pavilion for me, and then copy a copy for each person to ensure that everyone in the sect can get a set." Dubusi glanced at the disciples around him, then waved his sleeves and left. In an instant, all the sadness of parting and reluctance to leave disappeared, leaving only the disciples wailing and complaining. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 594, Lighting Up the Technology Tree. Old Haoshan Fort. Tang Liu didn't know when he had built an altar with array patterns on the square of Haoshan Fort. He was now floating in the air above the altar, meditating. The array patterns on his body and on the altar below were all emitting faint blue-black light, as if some kind of ritual was going on. After a while, a beautiful figure suddenly walked into the square. Her green dress couldn't cover her graceful figure. Her face was extremely bright, but the 2 strands of green highlights on her forehead covered her whole body, giving her a more refreshing temperament. It was the second elder of Haoshan sect, Funi. She walked all the way to the altar, looked at Tang Liu floating on it, and said, "Zio Liu, Hulina and the others have received news. Daiyun's has left the body sect. Tang Liu slowly opened his eyes and looked in the direction of the body sect. In an instant, green flame patterns and blood-red thorn patterns appeared around the eye sockets of his two eyes. It just so happens that the God Realm has also sent people to the Benwu Pavilion to check out the situation. If it were a little later, they might have met each other. As he spoke, the blue light on his body and the array patterns became stronger and stronger, as if he was controlling something from a distance. Funi was a little worried. Will the body sect be destroyed? But Tang Liu sneered. They won't. At least for now. They still have to maintain the rule of gods cannot interfere with the lower world. Funi's face was still worried. But we are the last coffin-pushing site here. They shouldn't care, right? So will the Haoshan sect be? The young man floating on the altar curled his lips. If he really dares to destroy this place, my dad will break his legs first. Funi, but he is the God King after all. If he really goes crazy, because the psychedelic gaze and the light of truth were always on, Tang Liu didn't dare to turn around and look at Funi, otherwise he would roll his eyes at her. Sister, you have been online for so long, haven't you seen a sentence? Funi was stunned. What words? There can't be any dirty words she hasn't seen. Tang Liu, not dirty words. What are you watching all day long? Funi was a little embarrassed. What is that? It seemed that he had accidentally exposed his browser history. Tang Liu sighed lightly, his eyes ignoring space and distance, and fell into the Benwu Pavilion. Looking at the gods who had entered the two wooden box worlds, he used all his strength to manipulate the psychedelic gaze and the light of truth to influence and interfere with them. While doing this, he also explained to Funi, your father is still your father after all. This sentence, as soon as he finished speaking, the two wooden box worlds on the Benwu Pavilion exploded, and the gods who entered them fled in a panic, and then returned to the God Realm. Tang Liu also retracted his demon eyes and evil pupils at this time, and the blue light around him gradually disappeared, and the array pattern on the altar also became silent. Floating down, he watched Funi take out a pink square object after he said that sentence, and her slender fingers kept pressing something on it. He was stunned for a moment, looking at the thing in Funi's hand in a trance. He really hadn't paid attention to the things on the other continent for a long time, but even smartphones were made? Then he thought of something else. It turns out that Funi has really been online for a long time, and she is not using his connection with the system to understand his native world. Tang Liu leaned over to see how Funi searched. How is it? Did you find out what it means? Funi immediately moved away a little to prevent Tang Liu from seeing the content on the screen. But Tang Liu's dynamic vision was so good that even if Funi dodged quickly, he still saw what was on the screen. Okay, I won't look at your chat history, he said helplessly. After all, just like the browser history is the biggest secret of boys, girls' chat history is also not allowed to be seen. Hey, it's good to know. You can do your own thing, I'm leaving first. Funi glanced at Tang Liu. Although her tone was not weak, she looked guilty and walked away quickly. Tang Liu watched her leave and couldn't help rolling his eyes. Thinking about a cute little fox, he had jokingly called out change for me, but who knew she would grow up to be an internet-addicted girl? Tang Liu suddenly felt melancholy as he thought about this. Was it not right for him to start the technology tree of Douluo continent? Would the spirit masters there still practice now? Should he take some time to inspect it? Otherwise, the entire Xingluo Empire would be addicted to the internet. How would he explain this to Brother Bai's spirit in heaven? And would it be too late for him to resign as the national teacher? He thought anxiously, then jumped onto the altar and began to meditate in midair. Although the first wave of gods had been sent away, there were still 3 coffins waiting for Daiyuns to push. He had only recovered the power of 2 of them, and could barely confuse the God Realm so that they could not find him. After recovering a little more later, he might have to hide in the Haolan domain all the time. Funi, who had already walked out of the square, glanced behind her quietly. After confirming that Tang Liu was not paying attention to her, she picked up her phone and continued to type the words she had not finished typing. It has been confirmed that Liu's body is getting weaker and weaker. Maybe when the remaining coffins are pushed away, he may have problems. This message was sent to a chat group called Alliance to Save the Delinquent Youth Tang Liu. Not long after, someone replied in the group. After reading the reply message, Funi turned around with a guilty conscience, picked up her phone, took a photo of Tang Liu in the center of the square, and sent it to the group. When taking the photo, she didn't even dare to look at Tang Liu's back. Because her cultivation reached Tang Liu's level, She could detect the gaze staring at her in an instant, even if the distance might be very far. In that case, their group might be exposed. After Funi sent the photo, she looked at the screen and hurried out, muttering, "My mission is completed. If I am discovered, I will definitely want to live in vain." But this latest model is easy to use, the pixels are quite powerful, and it can take such clear photos from such a distance. God Realm. In the towering castle of the God Realm Committee, a meeting of the God Kings is underway. Tang San sat in the first seat, listening to the report of the second-level god who had just returned from the lower realm, frowning. The breath we sensed was a trap. Nothing happened at first, but when I found clues that might be related to him in that small world, I was attacked. That small world seemed to be a killer specially prepared for us. Tang San tapped the desktop of the conference table with his fingers and said, "It's just a cover to confuse us. If he really wanted to kill you, you wouldn't have come back long ago." The second-level god was stunned for a moment, and wanted to say something, but, "Okay." Tang San suddenly stood up, frowned, and said, "Keep paying attention to the lower realm. Once you detect a suspicious breath, go check it out immediately." "Yes." The second-level god bowed and responded, and finally left. After the second-level god left, Tang San looked at the other 4 god kings around him and said, "Thank you for making this trip. However, there is still no definite news about the outsider. Perhaps it is just a little thing he left before his death, which is now triggered by the people in that world. I will continue to pay attention. Let's stop here today." The new god kings of goodness and evil stood up first, nodded to him and left. Then, the goddess of life also stood up, said goodbye to Tang San, and disappeared in a green light full of vitality. Finally, it was the god of destruction, who was dressed in purple and had an unclear face. He did not say hello to Tang San, but just snorted coldly, and then disappeared in the God Realm Committee. Tang San sighed silently, and with the authority given to him by the previous God Kings of goodness and evil before leaving, he was teleported to a place in the God Realm. There is a river running through a valley here, and a small wooden house stands by the clear river. Standing in front of the door of the wooden house, the leader of the current God Realm hesitated for a while before raising his hand and knocking on the door. "Please come in," a deep male voice came from inside the house. Because the author of this chapter changed the introduction overnight, it was a pity that the extremely rubbish word count of the introduction in the background made the final introduction temporarily deleted and modified a little. Full 4 JPG. Chapter 595 Parents from Afar. Pushing the door open, Tang San saw the figure inside reading a book in the light of an oil lamp, and bowed respectfully. "Dad, I'm here to visit you too. Is Mom here?" The man reading the book glanced at him, flipped his wrist, and the book in his hand disappeared out of thin air. He said calmly, "What's the matter that makes you, a busy God King, have time to come and see me and your mother, 2 lonely people?" Tang San apologized. "The affairs of the God Realm are heavy. It's my fault that I have not fulfilled my filial duty. When I pass on the position of God King, I will definitely compensate you too." The man snorted and said, "Okay, don't think that your little thoughts can be hidden from you. In the past, I believed that you would pass on the position of God King. Now, when good and evil handed over the authority of the God Realm to you, you have long been tied to the God Realm, and it is not easy to get out of it. Tell me, why did you come to us today? Your mother is not here now. I will convey it to her when she comes back." Tang San smiled bitterly, and said, "I haven't visited you for so long, and you are still worried about me." The man's face was serious. "Let's talk about business." "Yes," Tang San responded and also became serious. But he also paused for a long time, as if he was thinking about something, and then he said, "Dad, I want to send you and Mom back to Douluo continent first." Although it was just a vague premonition, he still felt that there might be problems in the God Realm, so he began to consider letting his loved ones leave the God Realm for refuge. Now that he had come here, he quickly thought about how to settle his parents. For 2 seconds, the man sitting on the chair did not say anything. It was not until Tang San cast a puzzled look at him that the man asked seriously, "Why?" Tang San said, "The God Realm is not safe now. I hope you and Mother can go back to Douluo continent for refuge first. I will pick you up after I deal with the hidden dangers in the God Realm." The man crossed his arms and lowered his eyes as if he was thinking. After a moment, he began to drive them away. "Okay, I got it. Go back where you came from. I will discuss this with your mother. You can make arrangements first." "Okay," Tang San nodded and took his leave. "Give my regards to my mother." After leaving the wooden house and walking away, Tang San couldn't help but sigh. with a helpless smile on his face. He was still angry. After all, he hadn't visited them for so long. It seems that I can't spend all my time managing the God realm in the future. I still have to come here more often. But the extra expression on his face was instantly restrained, leaving only a little worry and coldness. He always suspected that he was not dead yet. After all, sure, God said that all his existence would be completely erased after death. He thought he was special because he had the position of God King. But since he still remembered it, is it possible that his parents still haven't forgotten him? For him, that name seemed to have become an unspeakable existence. Even now, he still feels sad occasionally. But since it has happened, we still have to look forward. His figure disappeared in a soft blue sea. In the wooden house, Tang Hao was thinking about something when he saw Yin push the door open and hum a lullaby with an unfamiliar tune that was not very nice. She seemed to be in a good mood. But when she saw him, she secretly hid something in her hand behind her back. He stood up and said, "You're back." He began to pour water for his wife. "Sainer was here just now." "Really?" Yin paused and glanced at the man with an ambiguous look. "What does he want to ask us? He actually has time to come and see us in person." There was also a bit of resentment in her tone, and it was obvious that she had some opinions about her son not coming to visit her. Tang Hao handed the water cup to his wife. After all, he is the God King, and now he has to manage the entire God realm. It's normal for him to be busy. Yin took a sip from his hand, then sat on the chair next to him, and said with a smile, "Now you are speaking for him. Who is it that complains to me every night that Sainer never comes over, and makes me unable to sleep well?" The man put down the cup and coughed awkwardly. "Really, Yin, if it wasn't difficult for him to know about the phone, she would have played the recording." She paused, then got down to business. "What did Sainer say?" "He said that the God realm is not safe anymore, and he plans to send us back to Douluo continent to take refuge." "What do you think?" After saying that, Tang Hao looked at his wife, who had suddenly lost herself in thought, puzzled. "Ayan, back to Douluo continent." After being called by her husband, Ayan came back to her senses and said, "I have no objection. Let Sainer make his own arrangements." "What about you? What do you think?" "Of course I have no objection, but..." The man suddenly frowned. "Logically speaking, I should want to stay and help him, even though my strength is far from his now." "But why?" When he mentioned returning to Douluo continent, I was so eager. He looked at his wife. A moment of confusion flashed across his face. After hearing what her husband said, Yin couldn't help but sit up a little straighter. She asked cautiously, "Why? Is there something you haven't done in Douluo continent?" "No." The man frowned fiercely. "It's not that there is something I haven't done. It's just that the desire to go back there is very strong, as if I want to find something back." "Then, what are you looking for?" Yin leaned her upper body closer to her husband, and her right hand on her knee was quietly clenched. "I don't know, but I seem to have been having a dream recently." He suddenly looked at his wife seriously. "Yin, do we have another child? Why do you suddenly think so?" "I don't know, I just have this feeling that did he really exist, but some accident happened and he died." Yin didn't speak. It felt so real in the dream. He was such a worry. I wanted to beat him up so many times. But he seemed so unhappy. Sometimes I saw him standing alone in front of me, looking at me as if I was looking at a strange world. Why? He was so cheerful and made me angry 1 second ago, and the next moment he was so distant that he was about to cry. I saw him covered in wounds, laughing and crying at times. What happened to him that made me want to take him home so much? At the end of his speech, the man began to mutter to himself. Yin was silent until she heard her husband's low call. "Yin." She looked over and found that the man with a strong face had become dejected without knowing when. "Did I forget something?" Looking at her husband's appearance, Yin sighed softly, walked to the man, held his rough big hand with one hand, and stroked the man's cheek with the other hand. She looked into his eyes, and her gentle gaze penetrated the man's eyes. "When did you start dreaming about these things?" The man looked down at her, and had the urge to drown himself in her gentle eyes. "I don't remember." "A few days ago?" Yin sighed softly again, and her right hand that was stroking the man's cheek came to the back of his neck. She said, "The 132nd time." After forgetting for more than 20 years, he vaguely remembered those 132 times. A faint blue light flashed in the palm of her hand that was stroking her husband's neck. The next second, Tang Hao's face was filled with a blank look. His body was stunned, and he was supported by Yin to sit on a chair beside him. Yin looked at her husband with empty eyes. sighed, pulled a chair and sat next to him. How, I didn't mean to hide it from you. It's Xiao Liu who said that when the jade bone of the exiled immortal enters the body, his Hao landmark will no longer work on you. In order to prevent Xiao Sam from noticing anything from you, I can only keep resetting your memory. Don't blame me. She took out her mobile phone and showed the man with empty eyes a photo on it. Look, Xiao Liu is still fine, and he is getting more and more handsome. Don't worry about him. Looking at the photo on the screen, her own expression was gradually filled with tenderness. Even though the photo only showed a back view and half of the face, as long as she could be sure that the child was still fine, she felt great satisfaction. Just looking at the message above the photo that said Xiao Liu's body is getting weaker and weaker, her tenderness turned into thick worry. She leaned on her husband's shoulder. Baby, are you okay? Beautiful love between parents. It would be very sad if the knife fell, Doge, but this is a family-friendly and funny story relying on some survival desires. Thank you to the little angels who voted for recommendations and monthly tickets. See you tomorrow. Actually, there is another chapter to start with the Holy Spirit Church, but the author plans to post it tomorrow to make it 590 integers Doge. Chapter 596, The Most Evil. After the God of Destruction left the God Realm Committee, he did not return to his territory immediately. Instead, he went to the second-level God who was sent to investigate the situation. Lord God of Destruction, what can I do for you? The God of Destruction looked at the second-level God with a respectful expression, and after confirming that there was no one else around, he raised his hand and condensed a purple rune. My lord, the moment he saw the rune, the second-level God's expression became dull, until a faint blue light emanated from his eyes. The purple rune in the hands of the God of Destruction absorbed all the blue light released from the eyes of the second-level God, and then, the divine power on his body seemed to become a little stronger. Is that so? The God of Destruction murmured in a low voice, and then controlled the second-level God in front of him and put down something. What fell from the second-level God's hand was a purple-red rune, which seemed to have been placed on him by someone a long time ago. After the rune fell on the land of the God Realm, it immediately merged into it and disappeared. But as a God King, the God of Destruction could still clearly feel that the barrier protecting the God Realm here had weakened a lot. Although it was only a short moment, it still couldn't escape his perception. Two more, he murmured again, and then controlled the second-level God to leave. I hope our transaction can go smoothly, he said the last sentence, and his figure disappeared here. Dayun's had been away from the body sect for 3 days. He was flying all the way west, but his speed was not fast or slow, as if he was waiting for something intentionally. Finally, at noon on the third day, he waited for the person he was waiting for. The sky was suddenly covered by dark clouds that appeared out of thin air, and the bright sky disappeared in the blink of an eye. Dayun felt a strong pressure spreading around him, and his figure that had been flying forward also stopped in the air. He looked around, and just blinked, and there were suddenly countless figures in black robes around him. He didn't even see how they appeared. With such a scene, Dayun couldn't help but step back half a step even if he was flying in the air. After a moment, a darkness gradually spread from afar until the sky, along with all the people in the sky, fell into darkness. He was flying in the sky just a second ago, but now he was standing firmly on the ground of bluestone slabs. A person slowly walked over at the end of the path. Let's go, Yuns. It's time to go back. The person stood in front of him and said so to him. Dayun bowed to him. Teacher. The person's face gradually became clear in the darkness. It was Long Xiaoyao. Dragon Emperor Douluo put his hands behind his back and used his domain to lead a large group of people to shuttle through space. It was not until he passed through the Mingdao Mountains that he separated from the other evil soul masters and left alone with Dayun. After there were no other ears around, Dayun began to talk to Long Xiaoyao, who was flying with his soul power beside him. Teacher, I have met Senior Yi. Long Xiaoyao paused for a moment before speaking. I know. After a long time, the master and apprentice did not talk again. Long Xiaoyao focused on flying forward with Dayun, and Dayun stood beside him silently. Until they landed outside the demonic forest. It was the first time for Dayun to come here, but he knew that the core area of this forest was the headquarters of the Holy Spirit Church, and it was also the territory of the Evil Eye Tyrant, the second ranked of the 10 fierce beasts. Long Xiaoyao, who had remained silent before, spoke up at this time. If one day, you have enough strength, if you have the opportunity, will you attack her? Dayun glanced at him. Although Long Xiaoyao did not mention her name, they all knew who it was referring to. He was silent for a moment and said, "If you don't want me to kill Senior Yi, I will show mercy. There are many feasible ways to either abolish her cultivation or seal her, but at least Yi Zishu will never be able to threaten him or the people around him again." Long Xiaoyao said, "She has committed too many murders over the years. Since she became an evil soul master, her temperament has changed drastically. I failed to save her in time, so I felt guilty and was willing to stay by her side, and even killed many people according to her wishes. But you, Dai Yuns, I know you want to kill her not for the sake of the people of the world. You are not that kind of person, and you are even an evil soul master like her. So why do you want her life, Dai Yuns? It's true that I don't want to enforce justice because I see Senior Yi has killed too many people. I don't think I'm that noble. Speaking of which, when I was practicing with you, I also killed many people with my own hands. Among them, there were also some people who were bad but also did a few good things. But for me at that time, they were all bad people who would put me to death, and I had to resist. Maybe there are better options for those people than killing them directly, but I didn't have the power to choose at that time. Now, if they decide to repent and not threaten others again, I might let them go. What is righteousness? What is evil? What is good? And what is bad? If it is just the power of soul masters, there is a clearly defined rule. But it is difficult to use this set of rules to distinguish people. You once tried your best to survive from those people, but now you want to let them go. Is this the change in your state of mind after your strength is improved? But you still didn't answer my question. Long Xiaoyao looked at the dark forest in front of him and shook his head with emotion. Dai Yuns continued, "Those bad guys who threatened me, I can forgive them, but what about others who have been harmed by them? I said before that I am not so noble, but I am not qualified to forgive those bad guys on their behalf. Just like Senior Yi Zishu, I may be able to forgive her and don't care that she tried to kill me, but what about those souls who were tortured and refined into weapons by her? What about them? And Elder Kingaya, because he was seriously injured in order to save him from Yi Zishu." At this point, he paused and said, "Elder Kingaya, it should be considered as my selfishness. Since Senior Yi has hurt him once, will there be a second time in the future? And the other people around me, what if Yu Hao has no power to defeat or accept me? I can't guarantee that I can be with them at any time, so I can't let people who can threaten them exist." Long Xiaoyao, "So this is what you want to do, to punish the evil that has harmed them on behalf of those who have been hurt?" Dai Yuns was stunned for a moment, shook his head and said, "I don't want to be someone who punishes evil, and I don't think I have the ability to formulate rules that can restrain evil. I don't even have such a noble heart. I just think that kindness should be rewarded with kindness, and evil should be prepared to pay the price of evil, but you yourself are the most evil among the evil." Long Xiaoyao looked at the disciple next to him, and there was a smile in his eyes. Dai Yuns also fell into a long silence because of his words. Yes, he himself is the owner of the ultimate evil, an evil soul master that everyone wants to kill. Using evil to control evil, not to mention whether it can work. Will anyone believe it? Long Xiaoyao smiled and patted Dai Yuns on the shoulder, saying, "Okay, I have always known what kind of person you are, and I will not make things difficult for you." He suddenly looked up at the horizon, his expression became a little bitter, but his eyes were gentle and firm. "Just promise me that if that day really comes, you want to judge her, don't hesitate, judge me too. Let's just have one chapter today, and even post it later." Holding Head and Squatting Defense JPG, the author is going to look for information about the Holy Spirit Church and the original work, such as finding out who the elders of the evil soul masters are and their rankings. Given that the original work is too large, there is no unified introduction, and the length is also long, it should be a big project, so there is only one chapter today. Doge, thank you to the little angels who voted for recommendations and monthly tickets. See you tomorrow. Chapter 597 Holy Spirit Church. Dai Yuns thought that his process of entering the Holy Spirit Church might not be so smooth. Although these evil soul masters wanted to capture him very much, and even his teacher Long Xiaoyao was a member of the Holy Spirit Church. But considering that he had killed some evil soul masters of the Holy Spirit Church who came to capture him before, he would at least be troubled. When Long Xiaoyao brought him to the core area of the demon forest, he saw 3 people coming towards him. The leader was a middle-aged man with short silver hair as fine as steel needles, and he was followed by a woman in black. Behind him was another old man with a thin figure. When he saw the 3 people coming, Yuns also heard Long Xiao's voice, that is the leader of the Holy Spirit Church Zhongli Wu, and the deputy leader Fengling, who is also Zhongli Wu's wife. The one behind is Scorpion Tiger Douluo Zhangpeng, who is a Holy Spirit Church worshipper like me and ranks 6th. Long Xiao's mouth did not open or close, and it was obvious that he was using the method of transmitting sound into secret to communicate with him. And with his strength as a limit Douluo, he was not afraid of being heard by others present. The Holy Spirit Church has long set up branch temples all over the Sun Moon Empire. There are usually not many people at the main temple here. Recently, there are only 3 of them and the 2 little girls staying here. While the visitor was silent, Long Xiao continued to quietly introduce to him the current situation of the Holy Spirit Church's main temple. Master Long, Zhongli Wu saluted to Long Xiao. Thank you for bringing back the Holy Son of my sect. I heard from the Supreme Leader that you have accepted the Holy Son as your disciple. Long Xiao looked at him calmly. Yes, Zhongli Wu bowed again. Thank you, Master Long, for your help. But I hope that I can personally complete the teaching of the Holy Son in the future. Long Xiao's expression suddenly turned cold. Why, you don't trust me? I dare not, Zhongli Wu said. It's just that this is related to the Honorable Holy Son of my sect. I really can't neglect it. At this time, the thin old man standing behind him suddenly laughed, looked at Long Xiao and said, Master Long, your strength is already outstanding in the world, and no one doubts your ability. It must be because of your good teaching that our previous attempts to welcome back the Holy Son failed, and we also lost some elites in the sect. Don't think that the leader is doing this in vain. After all, everything is for our Holy Spirit sect. On the surface, the thin old man seemed to be defending the Holy Spirit Church, but his words were all about implying Long Xiao, saying that the disciple he taught was a hidden danger that would slaughter his own people. This meant that he was doubting whether Long Xiao was a traitor. Yuns originally thought that he had nothing to do for the time being, and was secretly looking at Zhongli Wu. At first glance, the leader of the Holy Spirit Church did not look like an evil soul master at all. He had bright eyebrows, a straight nose and a square mouth, and he looked quite handsome. His eyes were a deep purple with a deep aura, and only by looking carefully could you see a little bit of a sinister look from them. When Yuns knew his identity, he was a little surprised for a while. After all, in his impression, the leaders of evil soul masters like this seemed to be old men. Only when he found the relevant information of the original work in the Hall of Thought and confirmed that the person in front of him was indeed Zhongli Wu, did he calm down again. After that, he heard what the thin old man said and looked at him. Zhangpeng, the Scorpion Tiger Douluo, is not only thin, but also has dark skin and one high and one low eyebrow, which is very distinctive. Combining the information in the original work, his cultivation is at level 96, and he needs to constantly devour animal blood to practice quickly. Theoretically speaking, the evil aura of his martial soul is not too strong. After all, other evil soul masters have to start with humans to practice. However, the martial soul of this Scorpion Tiger Douluo is a scorpion tiger that is somewhat related to the dark demon evil god tiger. It is a subspecies of the dark demon evil god tiger and the only martial soul in this series that may appear in humans. Yuns himself is not only the highest point in this series, but also has a genuine dark demon evil god tiger on him. So, I saw that Yuns, who had been trying to reduce his presence and wanted to be a little transparent, suddenly changed his expression, and the aura of the whole person was completely different from before. The boy was expressionless, but his handsome face suddenly looked sinister and evil, like a poisonous snake in the dark, or a ferocious tiger hiding behind the bushes with its fangs exposed. A very dark and icy breath was quietly released with this sudden change in the boy's temperament. The one who felt this most directly was not Long Xiao beside the boy, nor Zhongli Wu and Fengling in front of the boy, but Zhangpeng, the Scorpion Tiger Douluo, who was further behind. Although he was a super Douluo, his martial spirit was still the extremely powerful Scorpion Tiger, but now he suddenly felt his hair stand on end. He immediately cast his eyes on the source of the threat. The boy who stood beside the Dragon Emperor Douluo said nothing, but was looking at him at this moment. When his eyes met the boy's blue eyes with double pupils, he seemed to see a shadow behind the boy. It was a tiger covered in black. The king's stripe on the forehead seemed to be constantly absorbing the surrounding light, so the black stripes could be seen from the dark hair. When he saw the black tiger phantom, the alarm bells in the heart of Scorpion Tiger Douluo Zhangpeng were ringing. But when he saw a larger phantom behind the black tiger, his mind was completely horrified. The phantom could not be looked at directly. The moment he looked at it, the world in front of him fell into absolute darkness. Even the memory phantom that he glanced at quickly could not escape, and it was also a bottomless darkness. Moreover, the more he recalled, the deeper the erosion of the darkness became, until other memories were affected, completely trapped in darkness, and could no longer be recalled by the brain. The feeling that all memories, thoughts, and reason were falling into darkness and moving away from him almost made him crazy. It was not until circles of blood-red soul rings rose from the soles of the boy's feet and the boy's cold words rang in his ears that he woke up from the terrifying illusion. Scorpion Tiger Douluo, the boy's face was covered with dark stripes at some point, and the word king on his forehead and the three-pointed crown pattern were faintly visible in his hair. His handsome face looked even more evil because of these tiger stripes. He looked at the Scorpion Tiger Douluo behind him indifferently, with mockery and condescending light in his eyes. All those below me are ants that must submit to me, the boy sneered and read out the proclamation. So surrender, and obey me from now on. Scorpion Tiger, the original novel really described Tang Liu's appearance like this. In the author's impression, he has always looked old, so when I was searching for information about Tang Liu, my pupils trembled when I saw the entries Tang Liu x Hao. Chapter 598 Tang Liu. Scorpion Tiger Douluo's figure gradually bent down uncontrollably as Dayun spoke, and finally he knelt directly on the ground, his martial spirit also released uncontrollably. Then the black soul ring ranked 7th flashed, and the next second, a huge black tiger with a body length of more than 15 meters appeared in this area, but before it could fully transform, it suddenly shrank rapidly, and finally transformed into a black tiger with a body length of about 2 meters. The black tiger crawled on the ground, with a pair of purple fierce eyes drooping, not daring to look at the boy in front of him. Behind him, there was a scorpion's hooked tail tightly attached to his side, and he didn't dare to move at all. He kept whimpering in a low voice, as if he was making a flattering sound like begging for mercy. Dayun looked down from a high position, and was even unwilling to look down. He just lowered his eyes and looked at the black tiger crawling in front of him, just like a king looking at his subjects. He raised his hand and patted the black tiger on the head. It flew backwards and transformed into Zhang Peng, the Scorpion Tiger Douluo. He fell to the ground and looked at the arrogant boy in disbelief. You, he trembled and couldn't say a complete sentence for a long time. Dayun raised his eyebrows, his expression revealed tyranny and displeasure. What should you call me? Scorpion Tiger Douluo immediately knelt down and bowed his head nervously. My king, my monarch. Please forgive my offense and my disrespect. The boy snorted coldly and retracted his martial spirit at the same time. Come here. Scorpion Tiger Douluo got up from the ground and walked quickly behind Dayun, standing there with his eyebrows lowered and his head bowed, not even daring to look at the back of the boy in front of him. When Scorpion Tiger Douluo released his martial spirit body uncontrollably, Tang Liu and Feng Ling retreated to the side to avoid being affected by the black tiger that was 15 meters long. Now, these two people, even Long Xiaoyao beside Dayun, looked at him and the respectful Scorpion Tiger Douluo with disbelief on their faces. The somewhat arrogant young man looked at Tang Liu, stared into the other's bottomless purple eyes, and said calmly, Are you the leader of the Holy Spirit Church who wants to arrest me? Tang Liu just looked at him and didn't say anything for the time being. But Feng Ling beside him, a strong aura began to gather. Long Xiaoyao stood beside Dayun and watched coldly. After a moment, Tang Liu nodded slowly, and his expression gradually became interested. Yes, I am also the current leader of the Holy Spirit Church. Dayun smiled softly, glanced at him, one hand across his chest, the other hand raised in front of him, and then his eyes glanced at his fingertips carelessly, with obvious contempt. He said, I am very interested in the Holy Sun you mentioned, but why do you think I am the so-called Holy Sun? And you sent people to come here again and again, whispering something in my ear, saying go home? I have to say, it is quite annoying. Tang Liu smiled, took a few steps closer, and said, the previous people did not treat us well. I was negligent and did not let you see our sincerity. But you have the most powerful evil in the world, the ultimate evil, so it is naturally the arrival of the Holy Sun. As the leader, I have the obligation to guide you back. Dayun's face showed a mocking smile again, put down his hands, and also took a few steps forward, almost standing in front of Tang Liu. Although Dayun is only 12 years old now, his height is almost the same as Tang Liu. At this time, His momentum is not weak, and he even suppresses Liu. It is hard to imagine that this is something that a Soul King, even a Soul King who has not even released his martial soul, can do. He looked directly into Liu's eyes, curled his lips and said, "Are you tying me to your forces so quickly? But considering that my teacher is also a member of your Holy Spirit Church, and sent me a good servant as soon as we met," he glanced at the scorpion tiger Douluo who was always following him, curled his lips, and continued, "I can cooperate with you, join your Holy Spirit Church, and even become the Son of God in your words." The boy's face suddenly broke out into an extremely malicious smile. "During this time, you can use any means to manipulate and control me, as long as you can. But you can also see that I possess the ultimate evil. You should know what this means, right?" Liu looked at the boy in front of him with a sinister smile. After a moment, he also smiled and said, "Son of God, you are joking. Since you possess the most powerful evil power in the world, then in the future, you are destined to be the king who commands all our compatriots. How dare I control you? I even hope that you are willing to take over from me and continue to be in charge of the Holy Spirit Church in the future." The two of them faced each other and laughed at the same time. Until the boy suddenly looked cold, crossed his arms and said, "Boring." Liu was still smiling, and he didn't seem to be dissatisfied with the boy's behavior. "Boring," the boy repeated again as if to emphasize, "I thought you would not be able to resist attacking me, but now it seems." "Humph. Never mind, you will have plenty of opportunities to see the ultimate evil in the future. Now, I will join your Holy Spirit Church as you wish. You can teach me or try to control me, but you must arrange a place for me to live. Or is it your way of hospitality to let people talk to you in this damp and cold forest?" Liu smiled, made a please gesture to Daiyuns, and said, "I am negligent, please follow me, Holy Son, Master, he is too arrogant, should we brainwash him immediately?" Feng Ling said to Liu in front of him in a tent. Liu replied to her, "No, the power of extreme evil cannot be influenced by the means we have now. Since he can directly control the scorpion tiger with his 5-ring cultivation, it proves that he is not simple. He was able to escape many times before, and even my mother couldn't bring him back. It's probably not a coincidence. And you also saw that, those are 5 circles of 100,000-year soul rings." At this point, he smiled, and continued, "But it's just the nature of a teenager after all. Arrogant? It is precisely this kind of character that makes it easier to control. But he is from Shrek Academy after all, and he is not like the Fire Phoenix Saint who has lost his mind. We still have to observe him for a while and don't let him contact the Fire Phoenix Saint for the time being." "Yes," Feng Ling responded, "but the Scorpion Tiger, he's just a 96th level priest. Just give it to him. You can even make friends with him." "Why not?" Liu smiled. "Okay. Now the 2 saints are here, one of the saints has also returned, and the last saint is missing." Liu's expression suddenly became fanatical, and one could even vaguely see a bit of madness in his purple eyes. "The path to godhood, the method of godhood. Am I going to reach that height soon?" he murmured in a low voice, then looked at Feng Ling. "Continue to search for the whereabouts of the last saint in various places, increase the efforts, the sooner the better." "Yes, sir, I'm late today because I was looking for information about the Holy Spirit Church. Sorry." "Thank you to the little angels who voted for the monthly ticket. Thank you to the book friend, for the reward of 1,666 book coins. Thank you for your support. See you tomorrow." Chapter 599 Long Xiaoyao, happy to be a father. After Liu arranged a place for him to stay and said goodbye, Daiyuns drove away the scorpion tiger Douluo who was following him. Long Xiaoyao asked him, "Is it okay for you to be alone, without outsiders around?" The young man was no longer as evil and arrogant as before. He smiled and said to Long Xiaoyao, "For the time being, it is still under control. Of the 2 little girls, one is still in the process of martial soul mutation and may go out of control at any time. Recently, Liu has been helping her sort out her soul power, and you may not be able to approach her for the time being. But she is at the southernmost part of this headquarters. If you have the ability, you can go and take a look yourself. The other one can move around in the headquarters at any time. You should be able to see her if you go around. I will be in the headquarters for some time, but I guess after Liu has dealt with the martial soul problem of that girl, he will take you away from here," Long Xiaoyao said. With his strength as an extreme Douluo, he was not afraid that someone would eavesdrop at this time. Yuns nodded slightly. I understand. There's nothing much to say about other things about the Holy Spirit Church. The 8 titled Douluo elders are scattered throughout the Sun Moon Empire, and several super Douluo priests are not in the headquarters. You also control Zhangpeng. Overall, there is nothing to worry about. But still be more careful, especially if they want you to do things that you hate. Don't worry, teacher, I know my limits. Yuns agreed, thinking that he had planned to stay in the Holy Spirit Church for a long time. But teacher, I want to ask you something that has nothing to do with these things, Long Xiaoyao said. What is it? Yuns paused. Do you know the current dean of the Martial Soul Department of Shrek Academy, Mingfang Douluo Yan Xiaos? Long Xiaoyao was stunned and said, of course, isn't he Moon N's disciple? Yuns looked at him and confirmed that he should not know. But before saying it, he hesitated. Do you know that Dean Yan is actually your grandson, Long Xiaoyao? After Long Xiaoyao left in a daze, Yuns walked into his tent. But before saying goodbye to Long Xiaoyao, he did not forget to tell Long Xiaoyao that Mu Lao might not be able to survive, and he should go to see him if he could. After careful calculation, there might only be a few months left before Mu Lao's life ends and his soul merges into the golden tree, so it is reasonable for Long Xiaoyao to see his old friend for the last time as soon as possible. But whether Long Xiaoyao will go or not is not something he can decide, and Yuns feels that Long Xiaoyao may need to spend time to accept the fact that he suddenly became a grandfather, so shouldn't he tell Long Xiaoyao so early? Yuns felt a little guilty, and then he contacted Kingaya with his consciousness and asked, Elder Kingaya, will controlling the scorpion tiger Douluo have any effect on you? He does have the ultimate evil, and is a god-devouring evil-eye white demon tiger that is 1 level higher than the dark demon evil god tiger, but this does not mean that he can control a super Douluo with the strength of the 5 rings. The reason why he can control Zhangpeng so smoothly is because he has Kingaya, the real 200,000-year-old dark demon evil god tiger, hidden in his body. At that time, Kingaya used his ability to completely suppress Zhangpeng in an instant, leaving a mark in his soul, and eventually becoming his subordinate. Because of the equal contract, they can both use each other's abilities, but Yuns is limited by his cultivation and cannot fully exert Kingaya's power. But Kingaya is different. With 200,000 years of cultivation, using Yuns' power is equivalent to having an additional 96-level god-devouring evil-eye white demon tiger super Douluo, which can naturally completely restrain the scorpion tiger Douluo Zhangpeng. Even if he fights Hongli Wu, he has a chance of winning. This is why Yuns is so confident. Besides, Yuns is not weak now. The silver level awakening of his martial soul can make him close to the level of Soul Saint, and the gold level awakening can make him reach the level of Soul Douluo for a short time. Not to mention fighting Hongli Wu, at least he can run away. And after fusing the inheritance seed, he also learned that the second awakening of the martial soul is not limited to the gold level. No. After the mark is made in his soul, he will be completely under your control and obey your orders. Don't worry too much about this, Kingaya's voice sounded in his mind. Yuns nodded slightly, and the next priority is to contact Mazaya Ateo first to see how she is now. As for the other saint, it should be Tang Yao. If there is a chance, I will also contact her to see if she is controlled by the Holy Spirit Church. If I can help her secretly, I will help her. At least see if I can help her maintain a clear consciousness and memory. Yi's issue, in the endless space full of blue and black, a woman in blood-stained clothes sat quietly. Hearing the sudden shout, she raised her head, revealing her pale and thin cheeks. A flash of blue light suddenly appeared in front of her, and a young man suddenly appeared. At this moment, a complete version of the light of death that she had been preparing for a long time shot out from the top of the Tower of Death that suddenly appeared behind her, pointing directly at the young man in front of her. But the light of death only penetrated through the young man's body and could not hurt him at all, as if it was just a phantom standing there. Is this your way of greeting? It's quite special, Tang Liu said with his hands folded in front of his chest. Yizishu snorted coldly and stood up. How long has it been outside, in this space? Except for her consciousness, all states were stilled. She could not feel hungry or tired, and she could no longer accurately perceive time. Not long, just over 2 months, Tang Liu said. How long are you going to keep me locked up? Yizishu looked at him coldly, as if she would kill him at any time if she had the chance. Tang Liu spread his hands and smiled. Didn't Hulina explain it to you clearly? When you are needed outside again, I will let you out, Yi Zishu suddenly collapsed and screamed, "You made us a whetstone for that kid, and everything you did was for him. Who do you think you are? Why do you control our fate? Why?" Tang Liu quietly looked at Yi Zishu, whose aura was soaring and exuding madness and destructive thoughts everywhere, and did not speak at the first time. Instead, he waited until she calmed down a little before saying, "You seem to have made a mistake." Yi Zishu gasped for breath and stared at Tang Liu without saying a word. The young man with a faint expression said slowly, "I did not control your fate. From the beginning to the end, I just guided you a little. Although I put a choice in front of you, aren't you the ones who make the choice?" Chapter 600 The True Past. Yi Zishu pointed at him and cursed, "You have been deceiving us, you have been using us, cheating, using." Tang Liu laughed, "Do you think those deals are fake? Why don't you think about what you got from me?" Yi Zishu smiled sarcastically, "Yes, you once swore to me that you would tell me how to change my past. But now? I still look like this." Tang Liu didn't care about her ridicule, and continued to say to himself, "The deal I gave you is to let you find Long Xiaoyao. I believe you also know that my purpose is to make a deal with him. But do you know that I actually knew him a long time ago?" Yi Zishu's vocal cords were suddenly pinched, all sound stopped abruptly, and he just stared at the young man in front of him. "When Long Xiaoyao was still very young, I had contact with him, and so did Moon. Because of me, they have known each other since childhood, instead of knowing each other when you led your teams to participate in the continental competition as you remember." Tang Liu glanced at Yi Zishu, smiled and continued, "Because I have known each other since childhood, and when I was bored, I would also guide them in their cultivation. I can be regarded as half of their master. Are you confused? Since I knew Long Xiaoyao early, why did I make a deal with you at that time to contact Long Xiaoyao? Haha, in order to complete this deal with you and not let any loopholes slip, I specially sealed all his memories related to me. It was not until he accepted Dai Yunzi as his disciple that I unsealed his memory again." "So he didn't tell me that he accepted Dai Yunzi as his disciple," Yi Zishu murmured, and his expression turned cold the next second. "You said so much, what does it have to do with me?" Tang Liu smiled lightly, "Don't be impatient, listen to me first. The deal I made with you was to tell Long Xiaoyao that you really wanted to help Zhongli Wu find the Holy Sun. After that, I will tell you a way to change your past. But you broke your promise. After Long Xiaoyao went to the Duke's mansion to find you, I could no longer find any trace of you." Yi Zishu sneered. "Really?" Tang Liu shrugged, "But if I broke my promise, why didn't you expose me to Long Xiaoyao and Zhongli Wu for so long?" Yi Zishu suddenly got stuck. Tang Liu looked at her and laughed, but then said, "Guess why I suddenly came to see you today?" Yi Zishu did not speak. "Because Dai Yunzi has told Long Xiaoyao that Yan Xiao's is his grandson, so I am here now, just to tell you." Yi Zishu realized something, looking at the young man in front of him, his expression gradually became unbelievable. It is not easy to change the past, unless your past has long been what you want it to be. Tang Liu looked at Yi Zishu meaningfully, "Since I have come into contact with Moon and Long Xiaoyao when they were young. Then guess, have I seen you when you were a child? No, in my memory." "That's impossible," Yi Zishu staggered, as if she couldn't stand steadily. "I think you are the one who knows Yan Xiao's origins better than anyone else. You know that his martial soul is the bright phoenix, and you even know that his martial soul comes from you. Have you ever noticed that your bright phoenix is still there in all this time?" In the young man's devilish whisper, Yi Zishu wanted to let her second martial soul possess her like crazy. But there was no reaction at all. In her memory, the powerful second martial soul, the bright phoenix, which she dared not expose at all, was no longer in her body. And because she had been hiding for too long, she completely ignored this matter. When, before you were found by Zhongli Laogai and became the saint of the Holy Spirit Church, I divided you into two parts. One part is you now, the god of death Douluo, the supreme leader of the Holy Spirit religion, the evil Yi Zishu. You have inherited your original life trajectory and are destined to die. The other part is the bright phoenix Yan Zishu, which is my promise to you, a brand new past, a brand new present and future, and a brand new you. And she no longer has all the regrets you once had, and is destined to be with the one she loves." Tang Liu said this with a smile, not caring at all that Yi Zishu was about to collapse. He continued, "From the beginning to the end, you are just a puppet who bears the sins for Yan Zishu, and bears the pain, humiliation, and blood she will encounter on her behalf. A puppet that should not exist, a disposable tool. After a pause, he suddenly realized, oh, by the way, you are not nothing, and your son named Tang Liu, but he is also destined to die. He spread his hands and laughed out loud without caring. Let's stop talking to you. I still have to entertain Long Xiaoyao. By the way, deal with the evil he has done for you over the years. He shook his head and said, as for you, just wait for the day when you will be killed. His figure began to dissipate in the blue light. But just when he was about to disappear completely, he seemed to suddenly remember something, looked at Yuzishu with an empty expression, and said, by the way, didn't you ask me before, how can I control your fate? He looked down at Yuzishu. Just in this universe, as long as I am here. I am the sky, sitting in a small pavilion surrounded by blue-silver grass, drinking tea that he hadn't tasted for a long time. Long Xiaoyao's expression was a little dazed. Are you here? A blue light flashed, and a figure of a young man in blue appeared on the opposite side, speaking to bring him back to his senses. Looking at the other side's face, which had never changed since he was a child, Long Xiaoyao couldn't help but sigh silently for a moment. Senior, he put down the teacup in his hand and nodded to the young man on the opposite side. Tang Liu picked up the teapot on the stone table, poured himself a cup of tea, and said, if you have anything to ask, just ask. Long Xiaoyao tightened his fingertips around the teacup. Yan Shaos, it really is. Tang Liu held the tea in one hand and snapped his fingers with the other. A blue light flashed across his fingertips, and then Long Xiaoyao felt a lot of unfamiliar memories flooding into his mind. Do you remember? The young man said with a smile. Long Xiaoyao digested and absorbed those extra memories, and gradually understood everything that had happened. He looked at Tang Liu hesitantly. When, you? Long Xiaoyao quickly interrupted the young man. His face turned a little red. Don't say any more, Long Xiaoyao. If you say anything more, I'll be locked out. Thanks to the friends who voted for the monthly ticket. See you tomorrow. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.